Chapter 42. Even though he took the healing medicine of the Wang family of Beihai immediately after the war and managed to suppress his injury, it did not mean that his internal injury did not exist. Before school started, he risked his life with Qin Ku. In the entrance maneuver, he risked his life with Lu Xiuwei. Today, he risked his life with two fire-flaming realm experts who came out of nowhere for Wang Yuetong. The three fights were against different enemies. But for Li Tianlan, they were all battles that he needed to go all out. As a result, his injuries piled up again and again. Yesterday's healing potion and life-prolonging potion might have been in vain. After today's battle, his injuries were not light but serious. Even though he had forcibly entered the fire-flaming realm for only a few minutes, the injuries left on him would take him months or even longer to recover. In the Sky Academy with a fierce competitive atmosphere, Li Tianlan's realm was not high. Now that he was injured, it was obvious how difficult the situation would be during this period of time. But Li Tianlan did not regret it. As he said to the enchantress, everything he did today was because he owed Wang Yuetong a favor. The little princess of the Wang family of Beihai really had no bad intentions towards him. She cooperated with him to kill Lu Dongchao and exchanged a bottle of healing medicine for him with the credits she got from the first place in the maneuver, along with the longevity medicine produced by the Wang family of Beihai. These were all favors. In addition, she met Xianxia, a demi-immortal, today. It could be seen that Wang Yuetong was indeed helping him. From Wang Yuetong's standpoint, she might hope that he could join the Wang family of Beihai and make the Wang family of Beihai stronger after he entered the invincible realm. But it could not be said that Wang Yuetong's approach was wrong. With her identity, it was natural for her to have such an idea. And joining the Wang family of Beihai, for most people, was tantamount to a path to heaven. It was not a bad thing at all. What's more, some of them might become the son-in-law of the Wang family of Beihai, which was like a pie falling from the sky. But such a path was not suitable for Li Tianlan. He did not hate the Wang family of Beihai for standing by when the Li family was destroyed many years ago. But in the future, under his leadership, even if the Li family would not treat the Wang family of Beihai as an enemy, it would never advance or retreat with them again. And today, the Wang family of Beihai no longer needed a Li family that advanced or retreated with them. In this case, what could he get in the end if he was entangled with Wang Yuetong? He silently accepted Wang Yuetong's help. When his identity was exposed, not only would he be looked down upon by the Wang family of Beihai, even Wang Yuetong would have a feeling of being used and cheated. If they couldn't be friends, they might even become enemies with personal grievances. These were not what Li Tianlan wanted. He was a young man who had just come out of the deep mountains and forests. He had some ability and was not stupid, but he had no connections and experience. What he feared most was to get entangled with these seemingly aloof big forces. There were too many human relationship traps, and after a long time, they could entangle him to death. Wang Yuetong had no bad intentions, but who could tell what the Wang family of Beihai was up to? There was a clear distinction. It was better to draw a clear line between them. Now that he had saved Wang Yuetong once, they were even. He could get away as soon as possible, which was exactly what Li Tianlan wanted. Leaving the enchantress and Wang Yuetong behind, Li Tianlan went down the mountain alone in silence. His injury was temporarily suppressed, but his body became a little weak with the exhaustion of strength. He was already panting after walking less than a kilometer. Fortunately, this part of the road was downhill, which saved him a lot of effort. While moving forward, Li Tianlan took out his mobile phone and dialed Yu Qingyan's number again. While waiting for the phone to be connected, he suddenly remembered Xianxia's words. Xianxia said that he had just passed the life and death tribulation, and the next thing was the sea and the sky. Well, the sea and the sky. Li Tianlan felt his injury, laughed at himself, and muttered to himself, "The sea and the sky, my ass." On the other end of the phone, it was still Yu Donglai who answered the phone. He heard the last few words of Li Tianlan and said subconsciously, "Nothing." Li Tianlan smiled bitterly, sat down on the side of the road and said, "Senior Yu, I'm a little injured. Can you ask Qingyan to pick me up? I'm afraid I can't get a taxi in my current condition." "What's going on?" Yu Donglai's tone suddenly became serious. Before Li Tianlan finished, he said directly, "Where are you? Qingyan is still cooking, I'll pick you up myself." Is the injury serious? Is Wang Yuetong all right? Whether it was Li Tianlan, who was mediocre in his eyes but reckless, or Li Tianlan, who had infinite potential and amazing combat capability, in Yu Donglai's heart, there was one thing that had never changed. That was, he had never regarded Li Tianlan as an outsider. Li Tianlan had proved his own potential. In Yu Donglai's eyes, his future was almost as important as that of his granddaughter Yu Qingyan. On his future road, Yu Donglai was willing to do his best to escort him, even at the cost of his own life. So when he heard that Li Tianlan was injured, the old man suddenly couldn't sit still. "I'm fine, Wang Yuetong is also fine, but there's no car." Li Tianlan said his location with a bitter smile. Yu Donglai didn't talk nonsense with him at all. After hanging up the phone, he directly drove away. In Li Tianlan's impression, Lanshan National Park was at least dozens of kilometers away from Yu's private restaurant. Considering the traffic situation in Huading at this time, he thought it would take a long time. But in fact, in less than 40 minutes, a black Audi stopped beside him. The window rolled down, and Yu Donglai directly said, "Boy, get in." Li Tianlan dragged his heavy and weak body into the passenger seat, fastened his seatbelt casually, and said, "So fast. I'm in a hurry. Who knows if someone will attack you during this time? I ran a few red lights on the road, but it's not a big deal." Yu Donglai shook his head. He was old, but his actions were extremely straightforward. He skillfully turned the car around, and the Audi went straight down the mountain. "What's the matter with Wang Yuetong?" Yu Donglai drove the car. After the assassination, it was normal that Wang Yuetong was not there. But when Li Tianlan was seriously injured, the Wang family of Beihai didn't make any arrangements and let him sit here and wait alone, which was not in line with the style of the Wang family of Beihai. As the leading wealthy family in Zhongzhou State, for many years, countless people had been angry at the strength and domineering of the Wang family of Beihai. But that was just the silent criticism from different standpoints. In terms of normal human relations, the Wang family of Beihai would hardly let people find any fault. Li Tianlan shook his head and said softly, "I can't bear too much affection. I just don't owe each other anything. That's the best result." Yu Donglai was slightly stunned. He subconsciously glanced at Li Tianlan with a serious look. In his sight, Li Tianlan's expression was calm, without frustration, regret, or unwillingness. The sunlight outside the window shone into the car. Li Tianlan tightly pursed his lips and looked firm. Yu Donglai sighed softly. The case of treason caused heavy losses to Zhongzhou State and also hurt the Southeast Group. At the time of the incident, the Wang family of Beihai was indeed facing a crisis. It was reasonable for them not to take action. There was nothing to say. What made it hard for these old people to let go was the rapid silence after the uproar of the Wang family of Beihai after the case of treason. After many years, people like Yu Donglai, who used to be part of the game, had become outsiders. But Li Tianlan's identity as a part of the game could not be changed. His attitude toward the Wang family of Beihai was even related to whether he had a narrow escape or a narrow escape. Thinking of this, Yu Donglai felt that he needed to persuade him. "Boy, do you have a knot in your heart that is hard to untie?" To the Wang family of Beihai. "Every man for himself, and heaven and earth destroy him." Li Tianlan smiled. "There's nothing to say. But it has happened. The Wang family of Beihai and the Li family can't go back." He looked at the prosperous scenery outside the window and muttered to himself, "We don't owe each other anything. We don't owe each other anything." This was not only about him and Wang Yuetong. In his heart, it was the best that the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai could do this. Yu Donglai shook his head and took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket. He handed one to Li Tianlan and lit one for himself. The Audi shuttled through the traffic unhurriedly. Yu Donglai took a big drag on the cigarette and exhaled the smoke. Suddenly, his eyes became firm. "Boy, I'll let Qingyan follow you from now on. This girl is a little weak, but her means are not bad and her talent is also passable. She can hone herself in the Sky Academy and see more of the sinister people's hearts." Then she can wear off her weak temper. It won't be a problem for her to enter the thunder-shocking realm within 10 years. At that time, she can also help you a lot. Li Tianlan looked at Yu Donglai with a strange look in his eyes. Get lost. Yu Donglai scolded him with a smile and exhaled a mouthful of smoke. I said let Qingyan follow you and help you, not be your wife. You have a lot of love affairs in your life. I can't bear to let you harm my granddaughter, but she can still be an assistant. As he drove, his tone paused slightly. His smile faded and his eyes became a little lonely. Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun, the god of war family. You may not feel anything, but when an old guy like me looks at you, I really feel sad. Boy, you're the most down-and-out member of the god of war's family I've ever seen. You're all alone and have no one to rely on. Fortunately, you've worked hard. Otherwise, the Li family would really become a forgotten legend. Li Dunlan smoked silently and said softly, Thank you, Senior Yu. If I succeed, I will definitely treat Qingyan well. He could not refuse Yu Donglai, nor could he. This was the old man who fought with his grandfather in those days. Now he put his granddaughter by his side. Wasn't this also a kind of trust and dedication to the Li family? With his status, if the Li family was still there, Yu Donglai would definitely still be active on the top stage of Zhongzhou State. But now he could only live in a private home cuisine restaurant. His old contacts might still be there, but the wind and rain in Jianghu and the general trend of Zhongzhou State were getting farther and farther away from him. Was the old man really willing to accept such a result? If he was really willing, why did he put his granddaughter by his side? This was an old man's persistence and trust, and at the same time, it was his hope. What are you thanking me for? Yu Donglai threw away the cigarette but lit another one and said softly, The most important thing is to quickly build your own team. Your grandfather had 5 brothers with him, and your father had 8 people with him. They are the most core and most reliable team, known as the Sacred Guards of the God of War family. You don't have this condition now, but I still hope you can move faster. If you are willing to trust me, then you can fully trust Qingyan. Boy, grow up quickly. I'm not urging you, but I'm old, and the older I get, the more impatient I am. If I can see the Li family reappear in Zhongzhou State and set up the big brand of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun in my lifetime, I will die without regret. He drove and muttered to himself, After I go down, I can also talk to those old brothers who left early. Li Tianlan tightly pursed his lips and said nothing. It seemed that he would never become a person who often patted his chest to make a promise. Most of the time, he was silent, and he seemed to be used to silence. Yu Donglai started to talk and said softly, We brothers at that time, the eldest was called War Bear, and he had thunder vein and was born with great power. His father used to be one of the sacred guards of His Highness's father. The eldest grew up with His Highness, and he was the most loyal. He was with His Highness the earliest, and he died the earliest. After he went to the border with His Highness, it was said that he died in the 2nd year. He was killed by the sneak attack and siege of the experts of Annan State. As an expert of the thunder-shocking realm or even a half-step to invincible realm, he died in such a grievance, but it made people respect him. The second was called Sirius, and he was an assassin with wind vein. He came and went like a ghost, and he was the most ferocious and cunning. Many of Quangtu's assassination skills were taught by Sirius. After Quangtu committed treason, His Highness was held accountable. The second was disheartened and went abroad. Later, he was also accused of treason. But he was alone, and he had nothing to worry about. In those years, he was a lone ranger in the Dark World, and he was famous in the Dark World. But 5 years ago, the second took a task to assassinate a person in Africa that he couldn't afford to offend. After the task failed, he also died. He was killed in 3 moves. This was the second brother who had the best relationship with me when I was young. When I heard the news, I almost went to Africa. But I couldn't go, and it was useless to go there. So I could only stay in my small restaurant and muddle along. The third was called Qing Dai, and she was the third sister. She was a real expert in intelligence work. The third sister had 2 sons. In the last battle of Quangtu's treason, the third sister's son and husband served in Quangtu's army. As a result, after that battle, Kwangtu committed treason. Her husband died, and so did her eldest son. Only the youngest son was alive, but his legs were disabled. How tragic was that? When His Highness went to the border, the third sister didn't even show up, and she had no contact with me for many years. I guess she had a grudge against Kwangtu, which was understandable. But it was a pity that such a beautiful woman when she was young became old. She died of brain cancer 3 years ago. When she died, she didn't even let her family come to tell me about her death. This kind of ruthlessness was not the third sister who risked her life to save me with the second brother when I was in a tight encirclement. The fourth is me, codenamed Poison Doctor. I have been with His Highness for the longest time, and my progress is the slowest. When I met His Highness, I was still doing scientific research in the biological laboratory of Zhongzhou State. I knew a little about martial arts, and the ice-condensing realm was just SOS. Once I made a research report, and somehow I was targeted by a foreign dark force. They sent a squadron led by a thunder-shocking realm expert to kidnap my family. In order to save me, His Highness chased that group of people for nearly 800 kilometers. The lives of our family were saved by His Highness. Since then, I have been with His Highness. My strength is average, but my means of using poison are passable. Gradually, I also have some fame in the dark world. When Kwangtu committed treason, my son and daughter-in-law were also in Kwangtu's army. My son was an officer, and my daughter-in-law was a military doctor. After that war, they also died, leaving only me and Qingyan. When His Highness left, I went to see him off, but I didn't follow him. I don't know if His Highness will blame me for so many years. I don't hate His Highness, nor Kwangtu, but I am not reconciled. I don't believe that Kwangtu would commit treason. I can't let my son die so inexplicably. I really can't. Yu Donglai lit the third cigarette. His voice was hoarse, as if he was crying. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and opened his mouth. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't say a word. He knew who Yu Donglai was talking about. His grandfather once said that he was the old brother who had followed him for the longest time. After his death, Li Tianlan was just 2 years old. He had long forgotten the old man's appearance, but he knew that after the old man's death, it was his grandfather who dug the grave and set up the monument. He was buried in the unknown cemetery behind the border camp. Next to the old man's grave, there was an empty grave. When he was a child, Li Tianlan had never known for whom the empty grave was erected. It was not until more than a year ago when he secretly returned to the border from the desert in Beijiang that his grandfather laughed and said that the empty grave was prepared for himself that night, when he was half drunk. Li Tianlan had also seen the old man's children, a son and a daughter. In his memory, the uncle was quite tall and strong, and the aunt was plain but gentle. But now, the old man's children also died at the border one after the other, less than a month apart. They were loyal and had no regrets, but in the end, they didn't have a good end and had no descendants. Whose responsibility was it? The Li family had failed them and many people, such as Yu Donglai now, Qing Dai who died of illness a few years ago, and the 120,000 soldiers who were wiped out with his father's treason, as Gu Yunxia said. These old scores were all engraved in Li Tianlan's heart, dripping with blood and deeply engraved in his bones. Kunlun City. Prince Group. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes slightly to hide the demonic red light in the depths of his pupils, and murmured softly, "There will be an explanation, there will be." Yu Donglai patted Li Tianlan's palm and didn't speak. "Senior Yu, where is Lao Wu?" Li Tianlan was silent for a while and continued to ask. "Lao Wu, he is the youngest of the 5 of us, just over 60 years old this year, right? When he was with His Highness, he could even be regarded as a young man. His code name was Fireman, known as the strongest expert in the fire-flaming realm. Until the end, he never entered the thunder-shocking realm, but 8 or 10 people at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm died in his hands. Because he was young, he was sent by His Highness to serve as the second-in-command in Kwangtu's army. When Kwangtu committed treason, the border was chaotic and there were constant conflicts. He was on another front. But after Kwangtu committed treason, as the second-in-command of the army, Lao Wu was also held accountable and was directly thrown into the desert prison by the people of the Prince Group. There has been no news for many years, and no one knows whether he is dead or alive. At that time, His Royal Highness once said that among the 5 of us, Fireman was the first in terms of talent and was truly invincible. It is estimated that this sentence was one of the important reasons why Old Five was finally sent to the prison in the desert of the northern frontier. Yudong sighed softly. When he said this, his tone was not so angry or hateful, only a kind of numbness and sadness close to despair. Army? Li Tianlan repeated. Yes, the army. Zhongzhou State Border Praetorian Corps. 20 years ago, your father was the commander of the army. At that time, both father and son entered the decision-making committee, which symbolized the pinnacle of power in Zhongzhou State. With one family and one clan, they guarded the peace of a city and a country. How prominent was it? Who dared to disobey? Yudong Li's eyes were in a trance, full of memories. Li Tianlan's body stiffened slightly, and then returned to normal. I'm old and I like to talk nonsense. I've had thousands of words to say over the years, but I can't find the right person to say them to. When I first met you, you hid too deeply. I thought you were an idiot, and I was not in the mood to say it. Now it's different. Where is an idiot? You are clearly a genius. Boy, don't let us old guys down, please. Yudong Li shook his head violently and laughed. Li Tianlan nodded silently and said nothing. By the way, Yudong Li held the steering wheel and turned a corner. Suddenly he said, the map of God of War of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun is known as the Bible of martial arts in the world. Which chapter of the map of God of War do you cultivate? The map of God of War. That was the supreme treasure of martial arts that represented all the martial arts inheritance of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun. If taken out, it would probably be equivalent to a real martial arts manual. All the martial arts essences and unique skills of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun were recorded in it. Its value was simply inestimable. The 3 martial arts essences of the map of God of War were all the great way to the invincible realm. But which one was chosen would determine its final achievement. Yudong Li used to be one of Li Honghe's closest confidants, so he naturally knew the key. Li Tianlan lowered his eyes slightly and said calmly, it's the invincible manual. Yudong Li seemed to not hear it clearly and was stunned for a moment. The map of God of War, the invincible manual. Li Tianlan repeated it again. Bang. Chapter 43. Yudong Li was much quieter when he drove because he didn't hit anyone on the road but scratched a large piece of the car's paint. His agitated mood seemed to have returned to the numbness he had experienced over the years. Li Tianlan didn't show anything unusual on the surface, but his mind was in a mess. Even he didn't know what he was thinking about. His weak state caused by the injury gradually stabilized, but it was not optimistic. Halfway through the journey, his eyelids began to fight. Li Tianlan, who was extremely vigilant and seemed to be instinctively on guard against everyone, did not resist sleepiness this time. He sat in the passenger seat, grabbed the seatbelt, and fell asleep. Yudong Li looked at Li Tianlan, who seemed to be completely relaxed. He smiled and quietly slowed down the car to make it run more smoothly. Yudong Li deliberately slowed down the car and stopped the traffic for dozens of kilometers. It took him nearly 2 hours to finish the journey. Li Tianlan was dreaming all the way. The dream was messy just like his current thoughts. The car stopped near Yu's private restaurant. Li Tianlan was still a little confused after being woken up by Yudong Li. In the dream that seemed to last for a long time, there was his grandfather, a border veteran whom he had met when he was a child but was later buried in the cemetery, Qin Weibai, Ning Qianqing, Li Beidian, and Wang Yuetong. One by one, these characters appeared in the dream logically and naturally. However, as soon as he woke up from the dream, Li Tianlan, who was in a daze, felt that his mind was in a mess. He had a headache and his nose began to suffocate. Li Tianlan got out of the car with the blood-stained camouflage uniform and only a combat vest. He shivered as soon as he got out of the car. Li Tianlan sniffed and laughed at himself. He was afraid that he had a fever. The sequelae of forcibly improving the realm had begun. The fever was just the first step, a complete trifle. He had forcibly improved 2 realms, and now the power of the fire-flaming realm had disappeared. When his muscles were no longer tense and returned to normal, the pain was really worse than death. Li Tianlan touched his muscles and suddenly said, "Senior Yu, is there a place to stay? I'll stay tonight." "Whatever." Yu Donglai said indifferently, "I'll ask Qingyan to clean up. You can stay as long as you want." "One night is enough." It was estimated that his muscles would not completely relax until the afternoon or evening. After a night he should get better. Li Tianlan had never experienced the state that was said to be worse than death. He did not know if he could bear it. But even if he could, he reckoned that he would not be able to drink with Li Baidian and Ning Qianxing at night. He might as well stay at Yu Donglai's place. When he recovered a little tomorrow, he would go to Qin Weibai to get the information and then meet up with them. One night it is. Yu Donglai walked into the alley and pushed the door open. "It's almost time. Dinner is almost ready. You're seriously injured. After dinner, you should rest for a while. I'm going to the garden party." Li Tianlan stopped. Yu Donglai seemed to know what he wanted to ask and said directly, "We have to know who the attacker is. Besides, didn't you want to be even with Yuetong? In that case, I'll bring back some compensation. You've paid back what you owe her. But this is a life-saving grace, so she'll owe you now. That's not good either. Today, I'll make sure that both of you don't owe each other anything." Li Tianlan was silent for a while and said indifferently, "That's fine." With his back to Li Tianlan, Yu Donglai slightly raised the corner of his mouth with a complicated smile. Wang Yuetong was such a stunning woman. How could this guy be so hard-hearted? Yu Qingyan, who was cooking in the kitchen, saw Li Tianlan walk into the yard. She was a little happy and ran out with a charming smile and called him brotherly. Her eyes were innocent and filled with pure gratitude. She was in second place in the entrance maneuver this time. The reward of 50 credits was a complete surprise. Yu Qingyan was not weak. She entered the ice-condensing realm at her age and was almost a fire-flaming realm expert before the age of 25. If there were no accidents, it would not be a problem for her to enter the thunder-shocking realm at her peak. But what she had learned were all killing methods, which could not be used in the entrance maneuver. Therefore, the second place in the entrance maneuver was like a pie falling from the sky for Yu Qingyan. In her original plan, she would be satisfied if she could enter the top 50. Yu Donglai was known as the poison doctor. His unique skills were naturally closely related to poison. Yu Qingyan had received his impartation, but it was not very useful in an environment where killing was prohibited. If there was no rule against killing in the entrance maneuver and Yu Qingyan was ruthless enough, those ice-condensing realm experts could be knocked down in an instant. Even those experts in the fire-flaming realm had to be careful. Li Tianlan nodded with a smile. Looking at Yu Qingyan, whose eyes were pure and innocent, he sighed softly. In terms of talent and means, Yu Qingyan was naturally very good. But with her temperament, it was not something that could be changed overnight. She would have a lot of headaches in the future. "Qingyan, how's the food?" "This guy was a little injured. I took the ice glass I hid in the cellar and boiled it. We'll add soup for lunch," Yu Donglai said with a smile. Then he explained to Li Tianlan, "This girl has inherited all my culinary skills. It's a little like the pupil has surpassed the master. My private home cuisine restaurant is not big, but it has a lot of reservations. Several important guests came here for dinner, and it was this girl who made the dishes. You can try it later. I'm sure you'll be satisfied." Li Tianlan nodded. Looking at Yu Qingyan, who turned around and trotted to the cellar, he did not stand on ceremony and said with a smile, "Senior Yu, such a precious thing as ice glass is in the cellar? Is it edible?" Ice glass was an extremely precious plant. It liked the cold and was shaped like a lotus. It grew in a world of ice and snow all year round and was really a great tonic. Making soup was just one of its uses. Li Tianlan had seen records about ice glass in a book in the border camp. If ice glass was used as medicine with several other plants, its effect could almost be compared to the legendary gold elixir. It was the top holy thing for healing. "Don't worry. I've done something in the cellar. When your injury is healed, I'll take you down to have a look." Yu Donglai smiled and led Li Tianlan into the dining room in the yard. He took out a jar of wine from the corner and then went to the kitchen to bring back 2 dishes. Let's drink first and eat when we're ready. He sat opposite Li Tianlan and smiled. He opened the wine and poured it into the celadone bowl in front of Li Tianlan. He used a bowl instead of a cup. It could be seen that the old man was really going to be generous today. Although Li Tianlan was injured, he did not want to be a wet blanket. He picked up the bowl and took a sip. The wine was mellow and fragrant. It was really good wine. Then he froze. As soon as the wine entered his stomach, what he felt was not spiciness, but an extremely strong fragrance of medicine. The wine flowed down his throat, and Li Tianlan, who had been a little weak, felt warm all over and indescribably comfortable. How is it? Yu Donglai picked up a mouthful of food and said softly, I'm afraid this wine is more than 20 years old. At that time, your father had just entered the invincible realm and the international situation was chaotic. Your grandfather, your father, and a few of us old brothers were all addicted to wine. That's why we have this kind of wine today. It can drink and heal. The wine was made by me. With the status of the Li family at that time, what resources couldn't they get? In each jar of wine, I added more than 10 kinds of precious herbs. In the words of the dark world, they are medicinal plants. For example, ice glass. It was just one of the many types of wine I had, and it wasn't anything fancy. Since third sister was a woman, and women love to look beautiful, I added a lot of ice lotus hearts into it. In the end, no one could tell what this wine could do. It could heal, refresh, and even make one look good. Why do I care so much? As long as it's delicious. At that time, I made 50 jars of wine. In the end, we squandered it all in less than a month. Hilmayas. We didn't have that time. I was stingy at that time and hid 2 jars. I planned to find a chance to take them out to surprise my brothers, but I didn't expect that there would be no chance at all. After His Highness went to the border, I worked as a chef in the hidden Dragon Sea. At that time, many chiefs coveted the 2 jars of wine in my hands. Even Wang Tianzong wanted them. I was not willing to give them to them. How could I give them away so easily? Who deserves to drink this wine? A few years ago, I came to Huading and opened this small restaurant. It didn't take long for Little Bai to come to me. I was really happy that day and opened 1 jar. Today is the last one. Usually, it is hidden in the cellar. Today, knowing that you are coming, I took it out in advance and put it on display. The taste is probably just right now. Li Tianlan took another sip in silence. The wine was mellow with a hint of coolness. It soaked into his heart and lungs. The strong fragrance of medicine swept his taste buds again from top to bottom. Good wine. Li Tianlan nodded slightly and said softly, Hey, Sister Yuetong? Didn't Grandpa say that you wouldn't come? Yu Qingyan's sweet voice suddenly sounded from the yard. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows subconsciously and was indifferent. Yu Donglai turned around and glanced at the small yard. Wang Yuetong was standing in the yard, biting her lip and seeming to be hesitant. Her aggrieved and worried look was really more beautiful than a flower, which made people feel pity for her. Yu Donglai suddenly smiled and said softly, I said that you are destined to have a peach blossom. Look, the little princess has come to your door. Li Tianlan took a sip of wine and said nothing. Don't be confused. It's not difficult to understand why this little girl has her eyes on you. I heard from Qingyan that your performance in the entrance maneuver was really outstanding. You have the wind and thunder veins and killed the enemy across realms. No matter how prominent Wang Yuetong's identity is, she is still a young girl at the age of love. Even if she doesn't fall in love at first sight, it's not surprising that she can't help but get close to a really outstanding peer. Plus, you saved the damsel in distress today. Why can't she be moved? Wang Yuetong will get married sooner or later. In the whole Zhongzhou state, how many people can match Wang Yuetong's family background? Even if there was, with her father's arrogant personality, he might not be interested. But you are different. As long as you join the Wang family of Beihai, you will be a proper expert of the invincible realm in the future. You and Wang Yuetong will be a good story. Otherwise, no matter how much Wang Tianzong spoils his daughter, when it's time for her to get married, won't she? Under such circumstances, Wang Yuetong can find a man with great potential who sincerely appreciates her. She will never refuse. It's natural that she has her eyes on you. But if it's just like that, then it's nothing. Even if you save her once, she might not be so eager to repay you with her body. At most, she might be a little moved, and then there will be some tentative contact. But you, boy, just saved her life and you want to be even with the Wang family of Beihai. You really want to be even, but what's the difference between this method and loosening the reins? It's so brilliant. You've outsmarted yourself. Not to mention Wang Yuetong, even a strong woman who has been through hardships and seen big scenes can be teased to death by you. Look, you've just arrived and you've come to my door? You've overreached yourself. I guess this girl has quarreled with Wang Xiaoyao because of this. Li Tianlan's mouth muscles twitched. He suddenly felt that the good wine in front of him was tasteless. He picked up the bowl and put it down, smiling bitterly. I didn't tease her. It doesn't matter what you think about this kind of thing. It's the truth anyway. It doesn't matter what you say. Yu Donglai was smiling. He seemed to be gloating over the misfortune of others. Li Tianlan's expression was stiff and he was lost in thought. In the yard, Wang Yuetong, who had chatted with Yu Qingyan, seemed to have finally plucked up her courage and walked into the restaurant step by step. The sound of high-heeled shoes tapping on the ground was getting closer and closer. Finally, she entered the door. The little princess of the Wang family of Beihai, who had changed her clothes, stood quietly at the door. She pursed her lips, feeling a little wronged and uneasy. She looked at Li Tianlan with burning eyes. Li Tianlan only felt dizzy. He deliberately turned his head away and did not look at her. Wang Yuetong hesitated again and finally walked to Li Tianlan step by step. The natural fragrance of a young girl slowly drifted over, and Wang Yuetong's soft and aggrieved voice also rang in Li Tianlan's ears. Senior brother, how's your injury? Li Tianlan had mixed feelings. He wanted to say something, but when he thought of the complicated involvement that might occur in the future, he simply gritted his teeth and hardened his heart. He looked cold and said nothing. Wang Yuetong waited for a while and did not get an answer. She bit her pink and red lips hard, and tears seemed to be swirling in her eyes. Why did you do this to me? Did I provoke you? Li Tianlan drank up the wine in the bowl and still kept silent. Such a delicate and stunning beauty looked aggrieved at this time. Yu Donglai could not bear to see such a scene. He coughed dryly. He was thinking of smoothing things over. The sound of high-heeled shoes tapping on the ground outside the door rang again. Everyone looked up at the same time. Yu Donglai's expression was strange. Wang Yuetong slightly opened her small mouth and seemed a little surprised. Li Tianlan suddenly stood up. Surprise and astonishment appeared on his face, and he completely lost his composure. A woman that could not be described with any gorgeous words walked into the yard lightly. She wore a small black suit, a white shirt, trousers, and high-heeled shoes. Her long black and beautiful hair casually fell on her shoulders. She wore no makeup and no decoration, but she was as beautiful as a painting. Her beauty was beyond imagination. Her steps were a little hurried. Bathed in the sunshine outside the window, she stepped over the flowers in the yard and went straight to the dining room. She was so beautiful and peerless. Li Tianlan stared at her blankly, completely dumbfounded. Wang Yuetong bit her lips, feeling more and more aggrieved. She even felt like an ugly duckling standing in front of a swan, and for the first time, she felt a little ashamed. In terms of appearance, she might not lose to this woman who suddenly appeared. But the elegant and quiet calmness and gentleness of this woman were not something that a girl of Wang Yuetong's age could have. This kind of charm was enough to make any man lose himself in an instant. Wang Yuetong knew this woman. Qin Weibai. This was the woman that second uncle yearned for even in his dreams but was unable to obtain. In the past, Wang Yuetong only envied her unparalleled charm. But at this moment, she had some feelings of jealousy for the first time. Qin Weibai walked into the dining room and looked straight at Li Tianlan, her eyes bright. Wang Yuetong, who was closest to Li Tianlan, took a step back subconsciously. Then she suddenly reacted and flew into a rage. Like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, her little face turned red. Li Tianlan finally came to his senses and stammered. Looking at the dreamy woman in front of him, he did not know what to say. He raised his hand, subconsciously scratched his head, and giggled. Chapter 44. He dreamed of her and tossed and turned restlessly. Plus, he was a little hesitant. Li Tianlan undoubtedly had this kind of complicated and simple mentality towards Qin Weibai. Before he met Qin Weibai, he didn't know what love at first sight was. But when he saw her get out of the car at Huading railway station that day, Li Tianlan understood. He told himself at that time that she was the most perfect woman. If there was a fairy who was so beautiful that she seemed to be above the mortal world, it should be her. After a day of contact, they chatted and video-chatted thousands of miles away. Qin Weibai asked Li Tianlan if he missed her. How could he not? He thought so much that he almost went berserk, but what else could he do other than think? Could he really have such a woman? Was she really something he could have now? He couldn't be blamed for worrying about personal gains and losses. He was a young man who had almost nothing in the deep mountains and forests. When he met the goddess in his heart, no matter how well the goddess treated him, he couldn't accept it calmly. Being on tenterhooks was the least of his worries. There might be fierce men who had nothing but dared to throw themselves on the goddess's bed when they saw her, but he wasn't Li Tianlan. He really liked this woman. He liked her very much. He even regarded it as his greatest ambition to have her. How heavy was this kind of love? But at this moment, holding Qin Weibai's face in his hands and feeling her tender and delicate skin, Li Tianlan's heart had never been at peace. He looked at Qin Weibai's face seriously. At this moment, he was finally sure that the woman in front of him was very close to him. She was so close that he could see his own reflection in her bright eyes, so clearly. Li Tianlan looked at her quietly. He had 1,000 words in his heart, but he couldn't say them. He was actually obsessed. Ahem. Yu Donglai coughed heavily and interrupted the two people in front of him. Sit down first. Qingyan, it's time to eat, right? Serve the dishes. Boy, drink 3 bowls of wine before you eat. It's good for your injury. As for the rest, you can take it and bring the jar back to me after you finish. Li Tianlan seemed to wake up from a dream and subconsciously let go of her. When his fingers left the soft skin, he suddenly felt a little reluctant. He wanted to touch it again, but he didn't have the cheek to do so. For a moment, he blushed and became more and more embarrassed. Qin Weibai smiled and took the initiative to hold his hand. She said softly, I heard that you were attacked and injured? It's just a small injury. It's not a big deal. Li Tianlan shook his head, his face flushed. Half nervous and half excited, he giggled. Qin Weibai took a deep look at him and then turned to look at Wang Yuetong, who still had tears in her eyes but had regained her composure. Tianlan got hurt to save you. Her tone was flat, but under her gaze, Wang Yuetong only felt pressure. It was not the sword intent and killing intent in martial arts, but an innate aura, not strong but clear. Wang Yuetong bit her lip and stared into Qin Weibai's eyes. In order to protect me, senior brother fought to the death and forcibly raised his realm to the fire-flaming realm. He killed several experts in the ice-condensing realm and 2 in the fire-flaming realm with 3 swords. Wang Yuetong's tone was light, but in Qin Weibai's eyes, it was inevitable that she was sulking and showing off. Do you know how dangerous it is to forcibly raise his realm with his current strength? Qin Weibai gently raised the corner of her mouth into a cold and sharp arc, and the atmosphere of the whole restaurant seemed to become cold in an instant. Wang Yuetong seemed to move a little uneasily. She had never experienced such a scene of jealousy and blame. But looking at Qin Weibai's face, which made her lose confidence more and more, she still stubbornly said, Senior brother Tianlan didn't blame me. It's a virtue for a man to be generous. Qin Weibai interrupted Wang Yuetong and said lightly, It's understandable that he doesn't blame you. But I'm a woman, and women are all narrow-minded. He risked his life to save you. You can use it as a capital to show off your charm, but I feel sorry for him. She paused and then said with a smile, But it's none of your business. Later, I'll send someone to the Wang family of Beihai to ask for an explanation. Nonsense, I didn't. Wang Yuetong's little face turned red again, and her big eyes looked at Li Tianlan in a panic. She seemed to be explaining, "I didn't use senior brother Tianlan's risking his life to save me as a capital to show off." She pointed at Qin Weibai in exasperation, her eyes angry. Qin Weibai just said, "Oh," lightly, and then ignored Wang Yuetong. She just looked at Li Tianlan with a smile. "I owe junior sister Yuetong some favors. Today I did it willingly." Li Tianlan sighed in his heart. He didn't know whether to explain to Qin Weibai or to help Wang Yuetong out of trouble. Qin Weibai didn't say anything, but her small hand holding Li Tianlan's under the table slightly tightened. "I asked senior brother Tianlan." Wang Yuetong, whose face was red and even her breathing was rapid, seemed to have thought of a perfect counterattack. She suddenly said, "He said he didn't have a girlfriend." "Really?" Qin Weibai smiled sweetly, raised her hand holding Li Tianlan's, and shook it slightly toward Wang Yuetong. She said softly, "Then he has one now." Simple, direct, and domineering. She didn't even ask for Li Tianlan's opinion. Yu Donglai, who was ignored, didn't get angry. He smiled and shook his head. At this moment, Qin Weibai was the most familiar to him, but also the most strange. He was familiar because Qin Weibai acted like this most of the time when he saw her. However, as soon as he stood up, Wang Yuetong suddenly said softly, "Senior brother Tianlan, Baiden and Xianxia have also come out. Shall we have dinner together tonight?" Li Tianlan was injured, so he had decided not to have dinner today. In addition, the dinner was probably the most painful time when his muscles were completely relaxed. He subconsciously wanted to refuse, but when he looked at Wang Yuetong's expectant eyes, he opened his mouth but didn't know how to phrase it. "Tianlan, take me home after dinner, okay? Let's go back and have a rest. You can ask your friends to come home. I'll cook for you." Qin Weibai said softly, "Take me home. Follow me home." The meaning was basically the same, but the charm was completely different. "Okay, go home." Li Tianlan was excited and said without hesitation. Wang Yuetong forced a smile and continued to eat. Qin Weibai. She had heard this name countless times and met her several times before. She had a good relationship with Wang Xiaoyao, so she naturally knew how infatuated her second uncle was with this woman. Even in the previous meetings, Wang Yuetong also regarded Qin Weibai as her future second aunt. In the previous meetings, Wang Yuetong's deepest impression of Qin Weibai was that she was beautiful. She had never seen a woman who was more beautiful than Qin Weibai in her life, and she had praised her second uncle for his good taste. As for other things, there was nothing else. But it was not until today that she completely understood how wrong she was. The identity of the future second aunt had long disappeared. At this time, facing Qin Weibai as a rival in love, Wang Yuetong actually felt a sense of suffocation. What a powerful opponent. Wang Yuetong thought silently. When she lowered her head to eat, her eyes were bright and sparkling, and there was no flinching fighting spirit in her eyes. Yu Donglai's evaluation could be said to be right. This time, it seemed that she had really outsmarted herself. After a lunch that was not a living hell but definitely not comfortable, Wang Yuetong, who realized that it would be difficult to defeat Qin Weibai today, restrained her mind and stood up to leave. Yu Qingyan and Li Tianlan stood up to see her off. But this time, it was really a pure classmate's farewell. Wang Yuetong bit her lip and glanced at him. She silently walked out of the restaurant and out of the alley. Until her figure got into the car and left, Li Tianlan did not say a word. In the restaurant, after Li Tianlan and the other two left, Yu Donglai, who had been watching for a long time, slightly narrowed his eyes and whispered, "You sent someone to protect that guy?" "It's Horsewoman." Qin Weibai nodded and said in a calm tone. "What a big deal." Yu Donglai smiled slightly and picked up a mouthful of food. "Why do you suddenly want to come back? Things not going well over there?" "Not bad. I just want to come back to see him." When mentioning Li Tianlan, Qin Weibai's eyes were as gentle as water, and there was a kind of heartfelt joy in her tone. Such eyes, such tone, if not for the deep love carved in her bones, there would be absolutely no such feelings. Yu Donglai sighed again, a little baffled, but now he was too lazy to get involved in the young people's love. He would just watch the fun. Flaming fire. Qin Weibai lowered her head to eat a mouthful of rice and suddenly spoke. But Flaming fire subconsciously put down her bowl and chopsticks and listened attentively. Go to the garden party. Qin Weibai's tone was indifferent. Go to Wang Xiaoyao. We can't let Tianlan's injury go like this. He saved Wang Yuedong's life, so we should at least ask them to come up with something really good. Wang Xiaoyao has a medicine, and only one, codenamed Youth. Go and get it. Okay. Flaming fire nodded expressionlessly and stood up to leave. Yudonglai's expression changed dramatically. Codenamed Youth. This kind of medicine, even in the Wang family of Beihai, was the most precious thing. Wang Xiaoyao was known as King Xiaoyao of the Wang family of Beihai. Such a person only had one, which showed how amazing this thing was. Flaming fire walked to the door and suddenly stopped. Youth could be said to be the core treasure of the Wang family of Beihai. Even in the Wang family of Beihai, the stock was extremely limited, so it could be imagined how difficult this trip would be. She turned around, looked at Qin Weibai and whispered, "Boss, what if Wang Xiaoyao doesn't give it to me? Then kill him." Qin Weibai took a sip of ice glass soup. Her tone was as soft as a young girl's, but what she said was shocking. In any case, I want that youth. Flaming fire's expression did not change, and she went straight out. She naturally knew what Qin Weibai's words meant. But since the boss was not afraid, she was not afraid. Even if she might face Wang Tianzong. Facing the human emperor, the head of the 12 murderous weapons. As for Wang Xiaoyao's infatuation, it was just wishful thinking. What was there to say? I'll go with her. Little Bai, you don't have to clean up the dishes. Go do what you should do after dinner. As soon as flaming fire went out, Yu Donglai, whose expression changed, jumped up and rushed out of the restaurant. The flowers in the yard were in full bloom, and the sun was just right. Yu Donglai felt a little tired. He looked up at the sun and shook his head slightly. It was said that the people of Samsara Palace were crazy. Chapter 45. Holding Qin Weibai's soft hand, he walked out of the courtyard of Yu's private restaurant. What followed was the most exciting time for Li Tianlan to be alone. The alley was dozens of meters long, and the two walked in silence. Li Tianlan, who usually didn't talk much, opened his mouth several times but didn't know what to say. He could only hold Qin Weibai's hand subconsciously. His palm was sweaty. "Lan, are you nervous?" Qin Weibai turned her head and looked at him. Her smile was soft and playful, and there was a hint of playfulness in it. Qin Weibai's attitude was destined to be unknown, which made Li Tianlan fall into a trance again. "I'm nervous." Li Tianlan nodded honestly. At the dinner table, Qin Weibai said she wanted to be his girlfriend. Boyfriend and girlfriend, lovers, and finally husband and wife. How intimate was this relationship? But holding Qin Weibai's hand, Li Tianlan always felt that something was missing. Of course, there was unexpected happiness and satisfaction. But when he thought about it carefully, there seemed to be a lack of a natural feeling between them. Or it could be said that this was his one-sided feeling. Qin Weibai was very natural to him, too natural. It was a tenderness that seemed to be integrated into her instinct, quietly moistening things. Unconsciously, Li Tianlan had already been unable to extricate himself. But from Li Tianlan's point of view, such feelings came too abruptly. Therefore, Li Tianlan was more confused than nervous at the moment. "Why are you nervous? Are you afraid that I'll eat you?" Qin Weibai smiled sweetly and took out the key to open the car door. Yu Donglai went to the garden party with flaming fire, so the car they drove here was left behind. Now the two of them could drive home. Li Tianlan sat in the passenger's seat silently, with a heavy heart. Qin Weibai said no more. She drove the car slowly away from Yu's private restaurant. While driving seriously, she stared at the road ahead with clear eyes, as if there was no dust in her clean eyes. Li Tianlan sighed softly and finally took the initiative to poke through the window paper he had guessed for a long time. He whispered, "What's the relationship between you and my father?" His father, Li Kuangtu, committed treason and died 20 years ago. This year, Qin Weibai was not even 24 years old. In terms of time, it did not match at all. But in Li Tianlan's mind, this was the most likely assumption. If Qin Weibai had some connection with his father, or if she had gotten something from him, she would have taken good care of Li Tianlan and was even willing to give herself to him. Although it was absurd, at least there was a reason for it. Although this reason was not convincing, in Li Tianlan's opinion, it was also the most likely one. As for the connection between his grandfather and Qin Weibai, it was even more unlikely. For many years, his grandfather had always stayed in Li's village. The number of times he went out was pitifully few. It was impossible for him to trust Qin Weibai's position without reservation. Unless Qin Weibai had some connections with his father, then his grandfather would accept that business card. Your father? While driving, Qin Weibai turned her head and glanced at Li Tianlan. I don't know him, she said softly. What about that business card? Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai seriously and found that she did not seem to be faking it. He felt a headache. But now, his feelings for Qin Weibai were almost out of his control. If he did not figure it out, he would not feel at ease in any case. When Grandpa gave me your business card, he said that you can be completely trusted. Li Tianlan said calmly, his eyes soft. At that time, Li Honghe's words sounded simple, but how could Li Tianlan not understand what it meant? When Li Tianlan took the business card and made the call, it was almost equivalent to handing over the safety of himself and the border camp to Qin Weibai. After coming to Huading, Li Tianlan, who had a preliminary understanding of the current general situation, naturally knew how dangerous such a move was. If Qin Weibai had the slightest idea and revealed the news, then not only would Li Tianlan die without a burial place, but also all the people who were still holed up at the border at this time would not have a good end. But even so, Grandpa still casually gave him Qin Weibai's business card. What did it mean? Could it be that Grandpa really had contact with Qin Weibai? Li Tianlan thought quickly. In the year when Li village was far away from the border, Qin Weibai was just a little girl of 3 or 4 years old. Over the years, Grandpa had only left Li village a few times, and each time he left, it was no longer than a month. Under such circumstances, no matter how much contact Grandpa had with Qin Weibai, the time was limited. Why did he trust Qin Weibai so much? Li Tianlan opened his mouth, but this time Qin Weibai directly interrupted him and said softly, in the year when you were in the desert, I went to the border, met your grandfather, and then left my business card. That's all. That's all. Li Tianlan's face was full of disbelief. Many things are not as complicated as you think. Don't be angry, I'm telling the truth. Although I don't like your grandfather, I have to say that he is a very wise and courageous old man. He used to be the god of war of Zhongzhou state. Even though he has lived in seclusion for many years, he is still elegant. Qin Weibai slowed down the car and said in a leisurely tone, so don't make wild guesses. I have nothing to do with your father or your grandfather. I went to the border just for you, and it only has something to do with you. Are you satisfied with this answer? Not only was Li Tianlan not satisfied, but he also felt even more puzzled. Only has something to do with me. What kind of relationship is this kind of relationship that we have never met? Is it worth such a beauty to want to throw herself at me? You said you're willing to be my girlfriend? Li Tianlan took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Dealing with beautiful women was never a worry-free thing. Wang Yuetong was like this, and Qin Weibai was even more so. Not only did a few words not clear up his doubts, but they also made him more confused. What's the matter? Yes. Qin Weibai nodded gently, blushing, but her tone became more and more natural. From today on, you are my boyfriend, so don't be nervous, okay? No matter how I am outside, in front of you, I am me. If you are nervous in front of me, I will feel like a failure. Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai, lost in thought. Qin Weibai deliberately did not look at him, but just whispered, there are some things that I can't tell you now. I don't mean to hide it, but I don't know how to say it. Give me some time. When I'm ready, you will know everything. I have no secrets in front of you. Li Tianlan's eyes softened, and he reached out to hold Qin Weibai's palm on the steering wheel. He smiled and said, Do you like me? I'm more than like you. Qin Weibai's body seemed to be a little weak. She looked at the road ahead and muttered to herself, I'm more than like you. As the saying goes, love doesn't know where it starts, but it goes deep. Does it describe people like us? Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai, who was obviously a little absent-minded, and pretended to be relaxed and made a joke. Qin Weibai did not laugh. Love doesn't know where it starts? Don't know where it starts? She bit her lip, and the corners of her mouth rose subconsciously, but her eyes were a little sad. The car drove into a villa area that could only be regarded as mid-range in Huading. Qin Weibai drove the car into the small courtyard of the villa and parked it. They both got out of the car. Before getting out of the car, Qin Weibai opened the storage box. The storage box was obviously modified, and it had a password. Her expression was calm, and she entered a long string of complicated passwords into it. From inside, she took out the blue notebook that Li Tianlan was familiar with, but also strange at the same time. Li Tianlan glanced at it, but did not say anything. After getting out of the car, he took a few steps forward and subconsciously wanted to hold Qin Weibai's small hand. Her hand was as soft and slender as warm jade. As long as he held it, he was reluctant to let go. But Qin Weibai took a few quick steps forward and directly held his arm tightly. Li Tianlan's body stiffened, and he felt Qin Weibai's body almost completely sticking to him. He only felt a raging flame directly rising in his body. But when he saw the blue notebook that Qin Weibai regarded as a treasure, his heart moved and he calmed down. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. What do you want to say? Qin Weibai held his arm and raised her head. Her face was delicate and charming. This was the true charm of a woman. Li Tianlan almost forgot where he was for a moment, and then he came to his senses. He laughed at himself and said softly, I haven't asked you before, but in my heart, I always think that you have something to do with my father or my grandfather, and that's why you are so good to me. Even the notebook in your hand, I once thought it was my father's. But since you said that you have nothing to do with my father, then who does the weekly notebook of the Sky Academy in your hand belong to? Qin Weibai showed a rare hesitation. Li Tianlan was trying to find something to talk about. Seeing Qin Weibai like this, he said at once, I just asked casually. If it's not convenient to say, then forget it. There's nothing inconvenient about it. Qin Weibai opened the front door of the villa, walked in holding Li Tianlan's arm, and said softly, I just don't know how to say it. You should have a look at this notebook, but now is not the time. I'll give it to you when the time is right. You said that this weekly notebook has something to do with me? Li Tianlan looked surprised. He vaguely seemed to find a reason why Qin Weibai fell in love with him, but it was a little unbelievable. It doesn't matter much, but it will help you. Qin Weibai pulled Li Tianlan to sit on the sofa. Her smile was tranquil, just like the decoration of the villa. The interior of the villa, which was about 1,000 square meters, had nothing to do with the splendor of gold and jade, but it made people feel extremely comfortable. From the overall layout to the small details, it was very stylish and had a strong sense of home. She poured a glass of water for Li Tianlan and gently touched the notebook in her hand. Her eyes were in a trance, and she said softly, This notebook records everything about a chosen one in the past 10 years, including his experience, psychology, views, and even martial arts experience. Everything is in great detail. When the time is right, I will give it to you. A proud son of heaven. Not just anyone could use this term, not even any invincible figure could use it. Among the 4 invincible realm experts in Wuxia, it was estimated that only Wang Tianzong, who held the human emperor, could barely be related to this word. The heavenly sons of Zhongzhou state were born every 500 years. Any one of them was powerful enough to defeat the entire dark world. This person, Li Tianlan frowned. He's been dead for a long time. Qin Weibai's calm tone made Li Tianlan feel strange. She held a delicate celadone teacup in both hands, and her eyes were in a trance, as if she was lost in memories. He can be said to be the most arrogant and ambitious person I have ever seen. When I first met him, it was at Huading Airport. At that time, the only invincible realm expert on the killer list secretly sneaked into Huading for unknown purposes. The Zhongzhou state government originally asked him to investigate the purpose of the invincible realm killer, but he didn't bother to do so and directly came with the intention of killing. On the day he came, almost all the high-level officials in Huading went to the airport to pick him up, including the top leader of Huading, who was very likely to go one step higher. I happened to be there that day. When he got off the private plane, he smiled and looked very kind, with a pet dog in his hand. The top leader of Huading, who was not on good terms with him, went up and wanted to shake hands with him. But he put the leash of the dog in the hand of the top leader, who was a member of the decision-making committee. As for the others, he didn't even look at them and directly attacked. Attacked? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and asked in confusion, who did he attack? He attacked the invincible realm killer. I don't know which high-level official he came for. That day, he pretended to be a staff member of the airport and was waiting for an opportunity to take action. Unfortunately, before the invincible realm killer had time to take action, he was discovered by him. The whole battle only lasted a few seconds. The invincible realm killed the invincible realm. Unarmed, life and death were decided in an instant. Li Tianlan's heart beat violently, and his face was fascinated. The invincible realm killed the invincible realm, and it was an instant kill. That kind of scene was beyond his imagination. Really domineering. Then what? He asked. Qin Weibai glanced at him with an unreadable look and said with a chuckle, what then? Then he pulled the leash of the dog from the top leader of Huading, boarded the plane again, and left. From the beginning to the end, he didn't talk to those high-level officials of Huading. I asked him later, and he said there was nothing to talk about. They were a group of clowns, and he would rather play with baby than socialize with them. Qin Weibai smiled with a complicated look in her eyes, and took the initiative to explain, baby is the pet dog he raised. Li Tianlan was lost in thought, but the image of that heavenly son was formed subjectively in his mind. Arrogant, domineering, silent, fierce, and insufferably arrogant. It was a pity that such a person died. Fortunately, he died. Listening to Qin Weibai's explanation, he smiled and said, that dog was quite lucky. Yes, it could be said to be the most valuable pet dog in years. When he was alive, no one dared to provoke his dog, not to mention him. At a high-profile private party, it was said that a certain invincible realm figure in Kunlun City accidentally stepped on the dog's tail and refused to apologize. In less than 3 days, he died on the way back to Kunlun City, without a whole body. Qin Weibai held the cup, and her words were calm, but her eyes became more and more dazed. Li Tianlan's eyelids twitched, and he once again added a new impression to this strong man. Extreme madness. Such a figure really had the demeanor of ignoring everything and sweeping everything away. Li Tianlan suddenly thought of a sentence and said casually, that's what a man should be like. That's what a man should be like? Qin Weibai smiled bitterly. At that time, he was indeed insufferably arrogant and invincible. But so what? Didn't he die in the end? He made his debut at the age of 19 and was killed at the age of 29. 10 years of magnificent events, but in the end, wasn't it a sad song? Li Tianlan was stunned. In any case, he had never thought that such a figure would die at such a young age. How did he die? He asked softly. This time, Qin Weibai was silent for a full 5 minutes, and then said softly, it was said that he died in a siege, but in fact, he died of betrayal. His last battle was earth-shattering. More than 20 experts at the peak of the Thundershocking Realm and 6 Invincible Realm experts besieged him at the same time, but all the Thundershocking Realm experts were annihilated. 6 Invincible Realm experts, 3 died, 1 was disabled and 2 were seriously injured. Actually, even at that time, when he was at the end of his rope, he still had a sword that he hadn't drawn. If that sword had been unsheathed, he would have been able to take everyone down with him. But at the last moment, the woman he loved the most, who also loved him the most, stabbed him in the heart. Before he died, he didn't go crazy, nor was he angry. He just looked at her quietly, and finally died in her arms. Perhaps there was nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart, and he died with everlasting regret. More than 20 experts at the peak of the Thundershocking Realm were annihilated. 6 invincible realm experts, 3 died, and 1 was disabled. Li Tianlan was stunned, and his heart was in turmoil. With such combat capability, it was absolutely not an exaggeration to call him the heavenly son of the age. It could almost be said that he was invincible in the world. But such an outstanding person in the end died in the hands of his beloved woman. Could he really die in peace? Li Tianlan subconsciously thought of himself. What if one day he was invincible in the world and was stabbed in the back by Qin Weibai after defeating all the enemies? That was really the sorrow of dying with everlasting regret, but he couldn't hate it. A man and a woman, from the very beginning, were in different positions. If they were forced to be together, it would be an ill-fated relationship. Qin Weibai took a deep breath and said in a complicated tone, "What's his name?" Li Tianlan suddenly asked. Hearing this story, he also felt bad. If he was in the shoes of himself, that kind of deep sorrow almost made him breathless. Chapter 46. Dongqing Huang. For Li Tianlan, this was a completely strange name. But for the Dongqing clan, it was like thunder piercing his ears. After coming to Huading, although he had not seen it with his own eyes, several people had told him about this behemoth that dominated Zhongyuan province. The frequency of this family's name ringing in his ears was almost second only to that of the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City. Zhongzhou State's military industry giant was the most qualified superpower to represent the giant group of Zhongzhou State. Many top-secret military enterprises in Zhongzhou State were directly or indirectly under the control of the Dongqing clan. In addition, Zhongzhou State's most elite and most powerful border Praetorian Corps had 550,000 troops. Based on these general impressions, Li Tianlan was sure that this was one of the most powerful superpowers in Zhongzhou State. But now, Qin Weibai told him that there was a heavenly son of the Dongqing clan named Dongqing Huangtu. He was truly invincible in the world, a heavenly son of the heavenly son who could take on an entire nation on his own. But no matter how he thought about it, he felt that something was wrong. He didn't know what was wrong, but the idea never disappeared. The border Praetorian Corps, the Dongqing clan, Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun, his father, the current patriarch of the Dongqing clan, Dongqing Wudi, the commander of the border Praetorian Corps known as the God of Massacre of Zhongzhou State. Vaguely, Li Tianlan felt that there seemed to be some subtle things that only people in the game could understand. He thought about it silently, but he could not find the key. At present, the only thing he knew was that after his father, Li Kuangtu, committed treason, Dongqing Wudi, known as the God of Massacre, directly replaced his father and became the new commander of the border Praetorian Corps. The key to all those subtle things that he couldn't figure out might lie in this change of position. Li Tianlan's mind wandered. For the first time, he was curious about the Dongqing clan. Dongqing Wudi, the God of Massacre of Zhongzhou State. Dongqing Huangtu, the current heavenly son. Dongqing Rushi, the genius of the young generation of the Dongqing clan, had entered the fire-flaming realm at the age of 19. These were the 3 members of the Dongqing clan that Li Tianlan knew so far. As for how many other outstanding talents were hidden in this transcendental family? Dongqing Huangtu, Li Tianlan murmured twice. How long has he been dead? She asked softly. It has been a long time. Qin Weibai said as she held the glass of water. Li Tianlan glanced at her. When he first heard this story, he had a strange feeling, and now he finally understood what was going on. When Qin Weibai and Dongqing Huangtu met for the first time, she was able to go to the airport with a group of high-level officials in Huading at the same time. Even if she was just at the end of the table, such a status was quite high. How old was Qin Weibai now? How old could Qin Weibai be when she first met Dongqing Huangtu? He had been dead for a long time. No matter how long it had only been a matter of a few years. At this moment, he recalled the conversation he had with Zhuang Huayang. Zhuang Huayang said that in the past 20 years, every 5 years, there would be a major event in Zhongzhou State. Except for a few things that had nothing to do with the Dark World or had little to do with it, the major events related to the Dark World were his father's treason 20 years ago, Wang Tianzong killed Tian Ling 15 years ago, Situ Zhangyue killed Lu Tianqing 10 years ago, and Gu Qianchuan entered the Invincible Realm 5 years ago. These were the major events that had the greatest impact on the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State and the Dark World in the past 2 decades. But Dongqing Huangtu was not among them. Why was that? It couldn't be that Dongqing Huangtu died more than 20 years ago. At that time, Qin Weibai, who was 1 or 2 years old, could not have appeared at the airport. So, was the matter of Dongqing Huangtu concealed by Zhongzhou State? Or did Zhuang Huayang deliberately not say it? Li Tianlan shook his head and subconsciously touched his pocket. Qin Weibai, whose attention was almost all on Li Tianlan, bent down, pulled open the tea table, and took out a box of cigarettes. She said softly, "Are you looking for this?" "You?" Li Tianlan was stunned. "It's specially prepared for you, but it's not easy to get this brand of cigarettes. When it was sent here, you had already gone to the Sky Academy." Qin Weibai opened the cigarette package. It was a wooden box, light purple in color, with the word "Hero" engraved in the middle. It was very intimidating. When the package was opened, it was different from the usual pack of 20 cigarettes. There were only 12 cigarettes in the box, slightly thicker than ordinary cigarettes, but the mouthpiece was nearly half the length. Qin Weibai put the cigarette in Li Tianlan's mouth and found a lighter to light it for him. She chuckled and said, "This Hero cigarette is specially made by the Wang family of Beihai. It's for the core members of the Wang family of Beihai to enjoy. Its composition is also a little different from ordinary cigarettes. It is said that it can reduce the harm to the body. I got 3 boxes this time. You can give them to the old man later and let him take them to the Sky Academy for you. Zhuang Huayang won't stop you. If you carry 3 boxes of cigarettes by yourself, a lot of credits will be deducted according to the weight." "Where did you get this kind of cigarette?" Li Tianlan took a deep breath and asked, pretending to be calm. But Qin Weibai still heard a trace of displeasure in his tone that perhaps even Li Tianlan himself did not notice. She was slightly stunned and then understood. She shook her head and said, "I didn't get it from Wang Xiaoyao. After all, cigarettes are just consumables. The Wang family of Beihai doesn't control them strictly. It's not a big deal to get 3 boxes of Hero." Li Tianlan smoked in silence and did not speak. Qin Weibai looked at him quietly for a while and subconsciously moved closer to Li Tianlan again. She said cautiously, "Are you angry? Wang Xiaoyao and I are not even ordinary friends. Except for the occasional contact in business, I never pay attention to him in private. It's him who keeps pestering me." "I'm not angry." Li Tianlan patted Qin Weibai's hand. Looking at her explaining seriously, he felt complicated inside, and there was a kind of complacency that made him a little ashamed. He laughed at himself, grabbed Qin Weibai's hand, and said softly, "When Senior you told me that Wang Xiaoyao has been pursuing you these years, I did feel uncomfortable. Of course, I was unhappy, but I was not angry. To be exact, it was because my opponent was too strong. Maybe I felt a little inferior? A woman who the core high level of the Wang family of Beihai has been yearning for day and night for years is by my side. I'm obedient and good, but I always feel insecure. In the end, it's because I'm not promising now. If I enter the invincible realm now, my confidence will naturally come back. It's the same as a young boy and a young, talented billionaire who values a girl at the same time. They are both sincere. How many people will choose the former? It's rare, and I actually met it. I'm narrow-minded. Just now, I was thinking how good it would be if you don't meet Wang Xiaoyao in the future. Look, narrow-minded, good-for-nothing, insecure, selfish. This is me. Don't talk about others looking down on me, even I look down on myself." Qin Weibai had been watching Li Tianlan softly. After listening to him quietly, she said softly, "I don't like it when you talk about yourself like this." She paused and continued, "No matter how much Wang Xiaoyao has, it's the accumulation of the Wang family of Beihai for hundreds of years. Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun has made great achievements. Who says you have nothing? You can carry the responsibility on your back and still don't give up. In my opinion, this alone shows that you are more responsible than most men. In my heart, you will be more capable and promising than anyone else in the future. Li Tianlan gritted his teeth and boldly reached out his hand. He gently lifted Qin Weibai's chin and made her look at him. Qin Weibai followed Li Tianlan's hand and raised her face. Her bright and clear eyes were full of trembling obedience and gentleness. Li Tianlan's forced heroism suddenly dissipated, but he didn't show it on the surface. He squinted and smiled. More promising than Dongqing Huangtu? Qin Weibai suddenly stood up. Before Li Tianlan could react, she directly sat in Li Tianlan's arms. Li Tianlan subconsciously put his arms around the delicate body sitting on his lap. He only felt that it was really exquisite and fragrant. In a daze, Qin Weibai's firm and serious voice rang out. Of course, you will be more promising than him because you have me by your side. But he has a woman who will stab him when he is in a desperate situation. She obediently lay in Li Tianlan's arms. After a moment of silence, she whispered to herself, "Only in your arms can I feel the most secure." Li Tianlan held Qin Weibai's body tightly. His voice was soft, but it carried an indomitable determination. "Just based on what you said, if I don't surpass Dongqing Huangtu, I won't have the face to be with you." Qin Weibai pursed her lips and smiled. She straightened up and said softly, "I have a document here. I'll show it to you." "No need." The tension in Li Tianlan's heart finally disappeared little by little, and he got along with his girlfriend more and more casually. Holding her body, he was really reluctant to let go. He laughed and said, "Just tell me the content directly." "But I haven't read it." Qin Weibai fixed her eyes on Li Tianlan and said softly, "When the document was sent here, I was already in Billy state. How about I bring the document and read it to you?" "Don't be so anxious. What's the content of the document?" Li Tianlan held Qin Weibai tightly and didn't let go. Qin Weibai didn't insist. She moved on Li Tianlan's leg. The softness and elasticity almost made Li Tianlan go crazy. But she didn't seem to notice it. She found the most comfortable position and said in a lazy tone, "It's about the Sky Academy. There are some students you need to pay attention to, those you can rope in, those you can't, and their strengths and weaknesses, martial arts inheritance, and standpoints should be recorded. There are also some teachers and senior officials. Their respective standpoints, temperament, and so on are almost recorded. But I haven't got any news about the leader of the assassination course group. After the last leader of the assassination course group of the Sky Academy died on a mission, the Enchantress has been acting for this course. But now it's a new session, and it's a very special one. Zhuang Huayang probably wants to invite a super killer who can completely control the situation. Such a person is most suitable for Sai City. Zhuang Huayang and Sai City have been talking, but it's still hard to say who the super killers of Sai City will be. So the information about the leader of the assassination course group was left out. Li Tianlan glanced at Qin Weibai and said softly, "Even so, it's great. For any student of the Sky Academy, this document is the most precious thing. I'll read it carefully. But as for the students, it's not a big deal. After the entrance maneuver, I can basically know the quality of those people. There are masters, but there are not many who can pose a great threat to me and stand against me." When saying this, his eyes were in a trance, and he suddenly thought of Wang Yuetong. If they didn't owe each other anything, how would they live in the Sky Academy in the future? "We can't be careless." Qin Weibai shook her head. "This session of the Sky Academy is very special. In terms of the comprehensive strength of the students, it almost far surpasses that of the Deep Sea Academy in Yuzhou. The current situation can only mean that several young masters who are most likely to enter the Sky Academy haven't enrolled yet, but they won't wait too long. It's estimated that they'll be enrolled after this holiday. Although it's against the rules to enroll a little later, the rules are nothing more than human feelings, so it's not a big deal at all." "Why is it like this?" Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows, a little surprised. In his impression, the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy were almost equal, but Qin Weibai said that the comprehensive quality of this session of students in the Sky Academy was far better than that of the Deep Sea Academy. Was there any special reason? Because of the current situation in Huading. Qin Weibai furrowed her delicate brows and said softly, The two hugged each other in a very ambiguous posture, but the content of the discussion was extremely serious. There are no wealthy families in Huading. This fat piece of meat has now been targeted by all parties. There are no wealthy families in Huading? Li Tunlan muttered to himself, a little incredulous. Huading was the economic engine of the entire Xianxia state, the most developed municipality, and one of the most prosperous international metropolises in the world. How could there be no wealthy families in such a place? It was simply incredible. Although it's a little exaggerated to say so, it's not a big exaggeration. Huading used to be full of wealthy families. A few years ago, it was the strongest fortress and back garden of the Wang family of Beihai. But 5 years ago, the prince group seized the opportunity to break through here. Qin Weibai explained seriously, the loss of Huading can be said to be the worst failure of the Wang family of Beihai in recent years. The prince group took over Huading, and all the major groups in Xianxia state began to infiltrate Huading. Until now, the situation in Huading has been extremely chaotic. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's the battlefield of all the major groups. Under such circumstances, the original wealthy families in Huading moved their headquarters to other places to avoid being affected. All of them have moved their headquarters to other places. Those who remain are basically local forces that are not weak but can hardly make it big. There are only a few that can really be called a powerful family in Xianxia state. Therefore, for you and all the other ambitious people, Huading can be said to be the best place with the best environment right now. The situation is chaotic and muddy, but the pressure from above is not great. With all the major groups guarding against each other, Huading can be said to be a crisis at every step, but also an opportunity at every step. With such a good opportunity, who doesn't want to come to Huading to take a gamble? This is the real foundation of an emperor. Whoever can take advantage of the situation in Huading and succeed with a small effort will become the top big shot in Xianxia state. In this way, not only do all the major groups send young talents to Huading, but also some hidden experts can't sit still. This year in the Sky Academy is destined to be a turbulent time with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. You must pay attention to it. Qin Weibai explained patiently and exhorted him. Li Tianlan nodded silently, looking calm. In the information I collected, there are detailed records of several young experts who may enter the school late. Do you want to take a look now? Qin Weibai suddenly asked. Li Tianlan subconsciously tightened his arms around her body and shook his head without hesitation. No hurry, I won't take a look. Qin Weibai giggled in Li Tianlan's arms, but her hands around his neck tightened. Tianlan. Qin Weibai called him again, her voice sweet and sweet. Li Tianlan responded, narrowing his eyes with a look of enjoyment. I have a way to let you no longer feel inferior when facing people like Wang Xiaoyao, and you can even despise them. Do you want to know? Qin Weibai bit Li Tianlan's ear and whispered. Her sweet smell reached Li Tianlan's nostrils, and he seemed to feel limp and numb all over. He moved his body subconsciously, pulled Qin Weibai up from his arms, and looked her in the eyes. I can let you enter the invincible realm overnight, okay? Qin Weibai blinked and smiled teasingly. Subconsciously, Li Tianlan slapped Qin Weibai's buttocks. It felt plump and bouncy to the touch. Admiring the shy and angry expression of the beauty in his arms, Li Tianlan's so-called inferiority complex seemed to be disappearing bit by bit. He reached out and slapped her again. Smiling, he said, Seriously? You're not serious. Chapter 47. As time went by, Qin Weibai finally left Li Tianlan's arms and took the initiative to hand over the information that he wanted to read but was reluctant to let go of. The carefully bound information was very thick. It was a large stack of A4 paper, densely covered with handwriting, which showed how detailed it was. The Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy were the two most mysterious special warfare academies in Xianxia state. Such information was priceless to every student of the Sky Academy. Even if it was spread to the Deep Sea Academy or even abroad, its value would only be higher. The Sky Academy had just finished the entrance maneuver, but Qin Weibai had already prepared this detailed information. From this aspect, it could be seen how terrifying the powerful and detailed intelligence force behind her was. This was not the power that an ordinary strong woman could have. Qin Weibai sat beside Li Tianlan with the information and read it to him. She did not read it from the book. After reading it once, she omitted some unimportant parts and went straight to the subject. She explained the profound in simple terms, which made it easier for Li Tianlan to memorize. But because there was a lot of information, it was almost dinner time when Qin Weibai finished talking about the teachers of the Sky Academy. In this case, the senior teachers of the Sky Academy are basically in a three-way situation. Li Tianlan thought about it seriously and said in a trembling and hoarse voice, "The sequelae of forcibly raising the realm in the morning finally began to show completely. His muscles were completely relaxed, and the pain caused by forcibly raising the combat strength spread all over his body. To be exact, it was not pain, but an indescribable emptiness and numbness. It seemed that every muscle, every bone, and every drop of blood in his body had completely disappeared. Li Tianlan could move and speak, but he could hardly feel the existence of his body, nor could he feel the sofa under him. His whole body was indescribably sore and itchy, which made him fall into a state of extreme numbness from the inside out. Such a feeling made him feel extremely uncomfortable, both psychologically and sensually. Most importantly, this feeling was still increasing. It was okay to keep his body still, but once he moved, the pain and the emptiness would spread all over his body, like being pricked by needles. If he didn't move, he would feel sore and numb. If he moved, he would feel severe pain. As this feeling became more and more obvious, Li Tianlan was already sweating all over. "You can say that." Qin Weibai nodded. Zhuang Huayang represents the academics, which can be said to be the main force of the academics in Huading. Outside of the Sky Academy, their forces in Huading are not strong enough. Yi Fengqing and the Enchantress represent the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong is good at setting up the overall situation. These two are likely to be important pawns of the Wang family of Beihai's dominance in Huading. Gu Yunxia represents Kunlun City, which is the most awkward among the three. On the surface, they are stronger than Yi Kunlun. But apart from Gu Yunxia, there are only a few weak figures, so they have little say. Gu Weibai Li City. Tianzong An Kunlun of Li City, but she was killed by you. Tianzong Lu Xiong Soxian. And will to she. By, of. She stood up and looked at Li Tianlan's trembling body. She changed the subject and said, "Let me give you a massage. It may be uncomfortable, but you'll feel better later." "No need." Li Tianlan's lips trembled, but he managed to squeeze out a smile. It was indeed good to enjoy Qin Weibai's massage, but not now. Right now, his body felt like it was being pricked by needles. It was simply suffering. "Go on, you can distract me." Trembling, he lit a cigarette, took a deep drag, bit the cigarette butt and said vaguely, "There are 6 groups in Zhongzhou State now. Which group are you from?" Without an all-pervasive intelligence network, Qin Weibai would never have been able to get this information. Such an intelligence network could not be established by ordinary forces. It was normal for her to be connected to one of the 6. "I don't belong to any group." Qin Weibai shook her head slightly and looked at Li Tianlan's current situation. Obviously, he wasn't in the mood to go into detail. He just laughed at himself and said, "I'm just using a tiger's skin to scare people. You can think of it as me being the spokesperson of some big shot." A big shot from outside the borders. Li Tianlan's consciousness was already a little fuzzy, but when he heard this sentence, he still became a little spirited. He said reluctantly, "Male or female?" "She can be considered as my elder sister." She rolled her eyes at Li Tianlan and said softly, "She has a great influence in Europe. As soon as I came to Huading, I was targeted by the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State, but they didn't do anything to me. It's not that they are afraid of my elder sister, but that the Zhongzhou State government needs my elder sister's influence to achieve some things that are not easy to do in the open. My elder sister also needs the support of the Zhongzhou State government. It can be considered as mutual cooperation and mutual benefit, right?" In recent years, I've had a pleasant cooperation with some big shots in Zhongzhou State, but I can't say which group I belong to. Now that the academics are in power, we have a closer relationship with the academics. But I'm also a bosom friend of a core figure in the Dongqing clan, and I'm the only bosom friend. We also have cooperation with the northern faction. To put it nicely, as a spokesperson, I'm relatively aloof. If it's not necessary, the major groups don't want to offend me. But the things I can influence in Zhongzhou State are pitifully few, so I can only manage my own territory. Li Tianlan stared ahead with a dull look in his eyes. The feeling of growing weakness almost overwhelmed his reason, and he didn't know if he had heard what she said. Qin Weibai couldn't bear to look at him anymore. She turned her head and muttered to herself, "If you go abroad to develop your career, you'll start much faster." What a pity! A soft sound came from outside the door. The door was immediately pushed open. Qin Weibai stood up reflexively and walked quickly to the door. Looking at Flaming Fire and Yu Donglai, she asked in a hurried tone, "Where's the thing?" Looking at the anxious expression on the boss's face, Flaming Fire felt more and more powerless. She silently took out a wooden box that smelled of sandalwood from her pocket and handed it to Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai quickly took it and turned to Li Tianlan without hesitation. She took out a small round tube that shone with a metallic luster from the box and carefully fed him the light blue medicine in the tube. There were only about 3 to 5 drops of the light blue liquid medicine. But the moment it entered his mouth, Li Tianlan's tongue, which had been numb and unable to speak, suddenly regained its senses. The medicine entered his throat. A cool feeling entered his stomach. Li Tianlan only felt as if someone had suddenly poured a basin of cold water on him when his whole body was on fire. He felt indescribably comfortable and fortunate. He subconsciously opened his eyes wide and glanced at Qin Weibai. "Don't move. You'll be fine after a while." "About 5 minutes. Qin Weibai chuckled softly and said softly. Flaming Fire stood aside expressionlessly. Yu Donglai couldn't help but roll his eyes and said grumpily, "You'll be fine this time. Boy, this is a blessing in disguise. At least you won't have to worry about getting hurt during the few years you're studying at the Sky Academy." Li Tianlan still couldn't speak for a while. He just looked at Yu Donglai in confusion. This is one of the most precious gene potions of the Wang family of Beihai, codenamed Youth. Even the headquarters of the Wang family of Beihai has a limited stock of it. Youth can provide people with a huge amount of vitality. It won't make you live long, but it can quickly heal your injuries. Especially when you take it for the first time, no matter how serious your injuries are, with a large amount of vitality, you can be full of vigor in a short period of time. Moreover, this effect is continuous. A bottle of Youth can maintain the effect for about 3 years. Of course, it's impossible for you to recover immediately in the future. But as long as the effect is still there, you'll recover much faster than others when you're injured in the future. In order to get this, Flaming Fire and I almost fell out with Wang Xiaoyao. "How about it, boy? How does it taste?" Yu Donglai said quickly. Li Tianlan's mouth moved. Finally, he was able to speak. He said with a smile, "It's King bitter." This time, not only Yu Donglai, but also Flaming Fire glared at the bastard who was showing off after getting a bargain. She and Yu Donglai went to Wang Xiaoyao to ask for this bottle of Youth. When he heard that Qin Weibai wanted it, Wang Xiaoyao gave it to Flaming Fire without hesitation. Even Flaming Fire was moved by his straightforwardness. After all, Youth was not like longevity. It could save lives. Not to mention that the effect could last for 3 years. The fact that it could heal injuries almost immediately after taking it for the first time was enough to show how amazing this medicine was. Even if the Wang family of Beihai added up all of them, it was estimated that they didn't have 10 bottles of Youth. Even Wang Tianzong would feel distressed for a long time if he took out such a precious thing. But Wang Xiaoyao gave it to Wang Xiaoyao without hesitation. He was really sincere to his boss. However, this Wang Xiaoyao of the Wang family of Beihai was also extremely stingy. When he heard that Qin Weibai wanted to give it to Li Tianlan, his eyes turned red and he regretted it on the spot. Flaming Fire almost fought with Wang Xiaoyao at the garden party. Fortunately, Yu Donglai mediated between them. Later, Xianxia, a Taoist master who was a guest at the garden party, also said a few words. Then she was allowed to take back the bottle of youth. But this bastard actually said that it was bitter. Don't drink it if it's bitter. If this thing was given to their palace master, it could definitely make their palace master more powerful. Even in the face of an invincible realm expert with 12 murderous weapons, he would not be afraid. Wang Xiaoyao was right. It was a great waste to give this precious thing to Li Tianlan. Only the boss would indulge him like this. Flaming Fire took a deep breath, her face full of resentment. Well, I see that this guy is fine. I should go back. Yu Donglai glanced at Li Tianlan and suddenly said, "Leave after dinner." Qin Weibai stood up and said, "I'm going to cook. The old man can help." She glanced at Li Tianlan and said softly, "Do you want your friend to come over? My cooking skills are no worse than the old man's." "No need. Another day." Li Tianlan smiled and said softly. With a girlfriend like Qin Weibai, he really couldn't wait to show off. But now, he really didn't have the capital to do so. If he called Ning Qianqing and Li Beiyan over, they might even mistake him for living off a woman. Even if he wanted to call them over, he didn't have the confidence to do so. Qin Weibai looked at him deeply, nodded, and walked to the kitchen. The dinner was not too sumptuous. Qin Weibai and Yu Donglai made a few home-cooked dishes and boiled a pot of congee with pork and century eggs, which had a special taste. The effect of youth against the natural order had already come into play before dinner. The pain caused by Li Tianlan forcibly raising his realm had disappeared. Even the injuries left by the entrance maneuver seemed to have completely disappeared. With a great appetite, he sat at the dining table and looked at Qin Weibai from time to time. He really experienced what it meant to be a feast for the eyes. He finished nearly half of the large pot of congee with pork and century eggs by himself. After dinner, Qin Weibai ordered Flaming Fire to send Yu Donglai. The old man looked at Li Tianlan playfully and did not refuse. He walked out of the villa with Flaming Fire. Outside the window, it was already night. At the dining table, Qin Weibai elegantly finished the last mouthful of congee and put down the bowl and chopsticks. Li Tianlan instinctively wanted to clear the table. He had done this kind of thing countless times in Li's village and had long been used to it. "I'm here. The kitchen is not a place for men." Qin Weibai stopped Li Tianlan. Her voice was soft and insistent. Li Tianlan stuttered for a long time before he finally said, "You've worked hard. I'm very happy that you've eaten my cooking," Qin Weibai said in a light tone. Then she got up and began to clear the dishes. Li Tianlan silently walked back to the living room. He took out a cigarette and lit it. Listening to the sounds coming from the kitchen, he could not tell what he was feeling. The cigarette was almost finished. Qin Weibai came to the living room after washing the dishes. Looking at Li Tianlan sitting in the dark, she turned on the light and said softly, "Do you want to watch TV for a while? I'll continue to read the materials." Li Tianlan smiled and said, "Perhaps it was because there was no electricity at the border." Li Tianlan was not very interested in all kinds of electrical appliances. Qin Weibai nodded casually and said casually, "I'm going to take a shower. Cooking will smell good. When I come out, I'll continue to read to you." "Take a shower?" Li Tianlan's heart jumped slightly. He swallowed subconsciously, nodded calmly, and picked up the materials next to him. But this time, he could not read any more before he even finished 2 pages of the materials. The living room was quiet. There was no sound of Qin Weibai taking a shower. But when he thought that his goddess was taking a shower, his heart was in a mess, as if there was grass growing in it. He put down the materials, stayed for a while, shook his head, and continued to smoke. But he became more and more absent-minded. The incomparably long 40 minutes finally passed. Qin Weibai returned to the living room in a white bathrobe with her long hair hanging down. At this moment, she seemed to have completely lost the sharp and indifferent aura. There was only a kind of charm and laziness that belonged to a domestic woman. She was breathtakingly beautiful. The two of them looked at each other. Qin Weibai looked at the materials that Li Tianlan put aside and chuckled. "Why don't you read them?" I can't read them anymore. Li Tianlan was frank and said with a wry smile. What do you think I think? Qin Weibai blinked. Her big watery eyes were indescribably seductive, almost drawing out Li Tianlan's soul. A man and a woman alone. Li Tianlan swallowed with difficulty and turned his head to one side. Do you still feel inferior? Qin Weibai came to Li Tianlan and asked softly. I don't know. Li Tianlan shook his head and answered honestly. He was really a little confused. He did not know whether it was because he felt too inferior or because Qin Weibai's extreme charm brought him too much pressure. I really have a way to solve your problem now. Qin Weibai stood in front of Li Tianlan and said softly. What? Li Tianlan raised his head subconsciously and saw that Qin Weibai, who was standing in front of him, had long been blushing. Qin Weibai did not speak. She just moved forward again, reached out her hand, and gently but firmly pushed Li Tianlan onto the sofa. A trace of rich and natural body fragrance floated into Li Tianlan's nostrils. He looked dull. Qin Weibai turned off the light. Vaguely, the white bathrobe seemed to be slipping gently. Qin Weibai crawled over and hugged Li Tianlan tightly. In the darkness, the two of them looked at each other again. Qin Weibai's breathing was rapid, and her eyes were shining. Her sweet voice, which was close to a whisper, rang in Li Tianlan's ears. It trembled slightly, like the sound of nature. The woman that Wang Xiaoyao has pursued for several years without getting a response, you only met her twice, and then you slept with her. Fool, what else do you have to feel inferior about? Chapter 48. When Li Tianlan regained consciousness, he only felt that his mouth and nose were full of natural, intoxicating and familiar fragrance. The sun was shining outside the window. Even with his eyes closed, he could feel the bright light outside the window. This made Li Tianlan feel a little lost and a little reluctant. That crazy and dreamy night had passed. At this moment, it was already a new day. Li Tianlan quietly took a deep breath and opened his eyes directly, just in time to see a pair of bright eyes that were also quietly looking at him. This was the most beautiful pair of eyes Li Tianlan had ever seen. There was a hint of coldness in the brightness and softness, but there was no sharpness in them. It was said that the eyes were the window to the soul. Looking through this window, Li Tianlan could only see a kind of strong persistence and deep affection. This was his woman. Li Tianlan told himself silently, and then said with a smile, "Morning. It's almost 10 o'clock. It's getting late." Qin Weibai lay beside Li Tianlan and chuckled. The thin cashmere quilt covered the curve of her body, and only a part of her snow-white shoulder was exposed in the air, which was very attractive. Li Tianlan directly reached out and held her in his arms. The two bodies were close together. He gently kissed Qin Weibai's ear, and then sighed and whispered, "When I woke up just now, I didn't dare to open my eyes. I even thought that last night was just a wet dream, and when I woke up, there would be nothing left." In fact, it was not only last night. Even now, he felt that everything was so beautiful that it was almost unreal. Qin Weibai's wildness, Qin Weibai's obedience, Qin Weibai's lovable charm, and Qin Weibai's unwillingness to resist. The scenes of last night kept replaying in his mind, and finally, the image of Qin Weibai holding him tightly and crying silently was fixed. Last night, Li Tianlan was extremely satisfied both physically and mentally. But what impressed him most was that when they went from the living room to the bedroom, Qin Weibai, who endured his attack, insisted on looking at him with tears in her eyes. She looked a little wronged, but also a little relieved. At that time, Qin Weibai was delicate and lovely. At that time, Li Tianlan was as crazy as a beast. But when everything calmed down and he recalled the way Qin Weibai looked at him and cried quietly, Li Tianlan felt an indescribable pain in his heart. He couldn't tell what kind of sadness and grievance were contained in those eyes, and he didn't know what Qin Weibai was thinking about. But from then on, Qin Weibai became completely crazy and seductive. Not long after dinner, they tossed and turned until midnight. At 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, the two struggled to take a shower before falling asleep in each other's arms. Li Tianlan's eyes were in a trance. He unconsciously stroked Qin Weibai's smooth and delicate back and muttered to himself again, "It's like a dream." "So you want to do it again?" Qin Weibai raised her head from his arms and looked at him with her big bright eyes without blinking. She said with a faint smile. Li Tianlan was excited, but that was all. Last night, he played too crazily, and now he was really powerless. It didn't feel much to lie flat on his back, but as soon as he turned sideways, even with a warm and fragrant body in his arms, he couldn't hide the numbness in his waist. "Forget it. Let's rest first. Another day." Li Tianlan shook his head. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt that the words, "another day," were really exquisite. He laughed, let go of Qin Weibai, and sat up on the bed. Almost at the same time, Qin Weibai also took Li Tianlan's clothes. Her movements were obviously a little inconvenient. Not to mention a woman who didn't know martial arts, even if she was an expert of the invincible realm and had just experienced the first time in her life, the pain couldn't be ignored. She gently bit her lower lip and insisted on getting up. It seemed that she wanted to help Li Tianlan put on his clothes. "I can do it myself." Li Tianlan subconsciously wanted to take the clothes. Looking at Qin Weibai's pale face because of the pain, he suddenly remembered the blood stain on the sofa, which represented a woman's chastity. Last night, he was so focused on fooling around that he didn't have time to clean up the battlefield. He guessed that Flaming Fire had seen it. At the thought of this, his heart suddenly felt a little strange. "I'll help you." Qin Weibai clenched the clothes in her hand and gently shook her head, but her attitude was extremely firm. "I think this is also what a wife should do. Camouflage clothes are relatively easy. If you wear a suit in the future, I'll help you wear a tie every day, okay?" Li Tianlan nodded with a dull look on his face. Looking at Qin Weibai, who got out of the quilt to help him put on his clothes, he understood for the first time what it meant to have a room full of spring. Qin Weibai, who gently helped Li Tianlan put on his clothes, also blushed. From time to time, she had to endure Li Tianlan's perverted hands. He could bully her so much in just one night. Was he still the bastard who said yesterday that he felt inferior when facing her? It took nearly half an hour to get dressed. When Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai, whose walking posture was obviously a little unnatural, walked out of the bedroom, it was close to 11 o'clock in the morning. Flaming Fire was sitting in the living room, looking through some documents. When she saw Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai coming out one after another, her expression changed. She glared at Li Tianlan fiercely, as if she was looking at a pile of cow dung stuck in a flower. She could not imagine that the boss could be so crazy, nor could she imagine that Li Tianlan would be so lustful. She had only gone to send Yu Donglai, and it had only been 2 hours. When she came back, this bastard had actually eaten up the boss, and so thoroughly. She naturally knew what the bloodstain on the sofa meant. Even if she did not know, the noise they made last night was not small. Flaming Fire's room was next to Qin Weibai's. As long as one was not deaf, they could know what happened in the master bedroom last night. Noticing Flaming Fire's murderous look, Li Tianlan smiled and was not angry. Qin Weibai had become his woman, and in the future, such looks would probably be very common. Even if he did not like it, he had to get used to it. Qin Weibai obviously also noticed the change in Flaming Fire's mood, but she did not say anything. She just tilted her head to look at Li Tianlan and said softly, "Are you having lunch at home?" Li Tianlan nodded and said, "I have 2 brothers who seem to still be living at a relative's house. I'll go find them after lunch." Qin Weibai trotted downstairs. Hearing that Li Tianlan had no intention of taking her, she pursed her lips and seemed a little disappointed, but she did not say anything. She just nodded meekly and said to Flaming Fire, who had already gotten up from the sofa, "I'm a little unwell today. You cook lunch at noon. Don't be salty, make it spicy." She was obviously taking care of Li Tianlan's taste. Flaming Fire glanced at Li Tianlan expressionlessly, nodded, and went straight to the kitchen. Li Tianlan's scalp went numb. Looking at the look in her eyes, he even thought that it was possible that Flaming Fire had drugged the lunch. It was not highly toxic, but something like laxatives. Flaming Fire could definitely do it. Qin Weibai frowned and carefully sat on the sofa. She took her bag, took out a card from it, and handed it to Li Tianlan. she said softly. There's some money on the card, but there's no password. Take it. Hooting is not like the Sky Academy. Money is waste paper in the Sky Academy, but it's different in hooting. You can't do anything without money. Li Tianlan did not stand on ceremony. He took the card and put it in his pocket. He had no concept of money since he was a child. Moreover, it was Qin Weibai who gave him the money. Last night, he took away her most precious thing, which could not be measured by money. It would be unreasonable to hesitate over a card. This is a really strange feeling. Li Tianlan smiled and said casually, I'm yours. What I have is naturally also yours. What's so strange about it? Qin Weibai leaned against Li Tianlan's arms, squinting, her face languid and coquettish. Li Tianlan tightened his arms around her and slightly narrowed his eyes. He changed from a boy to a man in Qin Weibai's arms. It seemed that Qin Weibai had also activated all his ambitions. Before, he had always regarded it as his responsibility to bring his grandfather and the others out of the border. However, in less than half a month since he came to Huading, he had learned about the general trend of Zhongzhou state, experienced the domineering nature of the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun city, and felt Qin Weibai's gentleness. All of these had completely transformed in the madness last night. Bring Grandpa and those uncles out of the border? It should be so. But it was more than that. Reverse the verdict for his father? It was also more than that. Holding Qin Weibai in his arms, Li Tianlan had an unprecedented desire to be strong and to have power. This desire was so strong that it was like weeds growing in his heart. The wind was blowing. The whole grassland was shaking violently. Li Tianlan's heart was burning, but his eyes were getting quieter. Time passed in silence. It was not until flaming fire called them to eat that Li Tianlan suddenly came to his senses. He lowered his head. Qin Weibai, who had been silent for a long time, did not fall asleep. She just quietly leaned against Li Tianlan's arms and looked at him without blinking. Her eyes were as gentle as water. I'll carry you over. Li Tianlan took the initiative to speak. Qin Weibai nodded obediently and reached out to put her arms around his neck. Flaming fire was efficient in cooking, but the taste of the food made Li Tianlan want to cry. He did not know if her cooking skills were really not that good, or if she had deliberately misheard Qin Weibai's words, but the 6 dishes for lunch were all too salty. As for chili, Li Tianlan did not see any at all. Qin Weibai tasted the dishes, looked at flaming fire, and continued to eat. But the frequency at which she picked up food was much slower. Li Tianlan could not stand the salty feeling that made his lips numb. He hastily ate 2 bowls of rice and got up. Flaming fire, who was eating slowly, glanced at him. Her expression was still cold, but there was a hint of a mocking smile in her eyes. Li Tianlan, who was keenly aware of this, was angry. He stopped and directly bent down to kiss Qin Weibai on the face. Then he laughed and went out, feeling refreshed. Flaming fire gnashed her teeth and could not eat anymore. She sat on the chair with dinner in her hands, lost in thought. Qin Weibai smiled and did not wipe the oil stains left by Li Tianlan on her face. She just put down the bowl and said in a flat tone, "The dishes are salty." "I know," Flaming Fire said in a low voice and did not refute anything. "He doesn't like it." Qin Weibai was silent for a while and spoke again. Flaming Fire, who had thought that she would be reprimanded by her boss, almost broke down. She could not help but raise her head and ask, "Boss, what's so good about him?" She knew that she should not ask this question. As one of the 12 super masters of Samsara Palace, if it were horsewoman or military counselor, they would never ask this question and dare not ask it. But Flaming Fire was different. She had followed Qin Weibai for several years, and the relationship between the two of them as superiors and subordinates had become like that of sisters. In her opinion, Li Tianlan might have amazing potential, but he was absolutely not worthy of the boss. But in fact, the boss had not only been ruined by him, but also seemed to have been bewitched by him. She was simply obedient to him. If Flaming Fire could really be at peace, then she would really have no temper at all. Qin Weibai glanced at her and said with a chuckle, "My man is naturally the best." She paused and continued, "The best." Flaming Fire put down the bowl and chopsticks and continued to be in a daze. Flaming Fire, be polite to Tianlan in the future. Qin Weibai was silent for a while and said again, otherwise, I don't mind sending you to Europe to carry out other tasks. Flaming Fire's body trembled slightly. She lowered her head and said dejectedly, I will pay attention in the future. Qin Weibai nodded and did not dwell on this matter. She changed the topic and said, did you miss anything about Tianlan in the Sky Academy? Flaming Fire said in an affirmative tone. Qin Weibai was very concerned about Li Tianlan's situation in the Sky Academy. In the Sky Academy, she would report everything related to Li Tianlan to Qin Weibai as soon as she got the news. Qin Weibai nodded and whispered, the Lu family of Huading, Gu Yunxia, and the Wang family of Beihai whose position is difficult to determine in the future. She frowned and seemed to be a little hesitant. Outside, there are horsewomen's secret protection. In the Sky Academy, there is Zhuang Huayang's protection. They dare not do anything. Flaming Fire said. It's still not safe. When they go crazy, what can't they do? Qin Weibai shook her head and was silent for a few seconds. She suddenly asked, doesn't the Sky Academy want to choose the person in charge of their assassination course in Sai City? Has the candidate been decided? I don't know yet. Flaming Fire hesitated and said directly, it's hard for us to collect information about Sai City. Then you go to Sai City. Qin Weibai said decisively, help me take a message to the city lord. Flaming Fire raised her eyebrows in surprise and felt somewhat inexplicable. The Samsara Palace had no conflict with Sai City in the past, but they had no interaction at all. Forget it. I'd better write it on paper. You go to Sai City in person and give it to Situ Tsangyue. Qin Weibai shook her head and looked at Flaming Fire seriously. She said calmly, you must give it to her in person. Flaming Fire nodded with a solemn face. Qin Weibai found a pen and paper and wrote 2 short lines. Then she put it in an envelope and handed it to Flaming Fire. She said, you go now. I'll ask the military counselor to protect Tianlan for the time being and let Horsewoman protect me. There will be no problem. Flaming Fire took the envelope and said yes. Then she left the villa without hesitation. Qin Weibai sat alone in the dining room and watched Flaming Fire's back through the French window. She did not speak for a long time. She did not know whether Flaming Fire's trip was a blessing or a curse for her and Li Tianlan. But some things had to be made and even gambled. It could be foreseen that whether Flaming Fire's trip succeeded or not, there would be another force in the Sky Academy in the future. A force that belonged to Sai City outside the control of the Wang family of Beihai, Kunlun City, and the academics. This influence would be extremely huge, both in the future and in the present. Outside the window, the sun was shining, birds were singing, and flowers were fragrant. Chapter 49. In Huading, compared with the garden party where a membership card could represent one's status, the existence of Hanyu Palace was even less known. Hanyu Palace's history predated the garden party by many years. It was originally approved in the name of a clubhouse, but today, many years later, it still had not issued any membership card to the outside world. Hanyu Palace covered an area of nearly 200 acres. It was not big and could even be described as exquisite. A clubhouse of this size was undoubtedly somewhat unpresentable in Huading. But if one looked at it from the perspective of size, every corner of this place could be said to be extremely perfect. Hanyu Palace was located in the western suburbs of Huading, facing northeast from southwest. In terms of feng shui, it was a standard paradise with a golden throne, a pagoda, and a cornucopia. It was backed by a high mountain and had a broad prospect. It could be said to be a blessed land that could ensure eternal peace. Everything inside here was also the work of a feng shui master in Zhengzhou State. To exaggerate, every grass and every tree here was very particular. Different from the antique style of the garden party, everything here was developed toward modernization, pursuing extreme luxury and delicacy. The main building in the center of Hanyu Palace covered an area of nearly 5,000 square meters and was 6 stories high. More than 2/3 of it was built with glass, surrounded by an artificial lake. The main building stood in the center of the lake, looking noble and elegant. When the weather was good, the surrounding green water, green mountains, blue sky, and white clouds could be clearly reflected on every piece of glass of the main building. Under the reflection of the sun, it was as gorgeous as a work of art. There were also a few small and exquisite villas surrounding the main building. They protected the main building from a subtle angle. These were the residences of the service staff and security personnel. Looking down from the sky, the entire Hanyu Palace was shaped like a cold moon. It was curved in an ingenious manner. The middle was wide and the sides were narrow. Every part of the interior was arranged just right. It gave off a grand and strict feeling. However, such a blessed land was usually empty most of the time. There were less than 30 attendants in charge of cleaning the place. The entire Frost Moon Palace did not receive any guests, so it was deserted throughout the year. Only very rarely would it be bustling with activity. Therefore, it was more appropriate to say that Hanyu Palace was the temporary imperial residence of a big shot rather than a clubhouse. The weather was fine. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, a middle-aged man who looked about 50 years old appeared at the gate of Hanyu Palace. He wore an extremely large black robe, and his entire body was shrouded in the black robe. Not to mention his appearance, even his figure was not obvious under the cover of the black robe. The strange black-robed man walked through the door carved with a cold moon, walked across the exquisite arch bridge that spanned the entire artificial lake, and arrived at the door of the main building without any obstruction. A woman of unknown age stood in front of the door, looking at the black-robed man slowly approaching with a sincere smile. The woman's appearance was ordinary, but her temperament was as gentle as the water of a lake. She was wearing a light white cheongsam and stood elegantly in front of the door, like a lady from a rich and powerful family. "Rose, is second master here?" The black-robed man came before the woman and asked in a low voice. "He's upstairs reading and hasn't slept all night. If you still haven't returned, second master will probably send me to find you." The woman with the code name Rose's voice was gentle and elegant. She was not in a hurry, and she exuded an intellectual aura. Her appearance was not outstanding, but her skin was extremely white and delicate. At first glance, it was not a problem to say that she was in her 20s, and it did not seem wrong to say that she was in her 30s. The black-robed man's body stiffened slightly. He nodded and walked directly through the door of the temporary imperial residence. The decoration inside the temporary imperial residence was the complete opposite of the outside world. It was filled with an ancient style, but it was not purely ancient. It was a bit like the style of the Republic of China from hundreds of years ago. It was dignified and grand, and it looked like it had a lot of history. The black-robed man silently walked up the redwood steps in the hall to the 3rd floor and stood in front of a door. "Is it Black Robe? Come in." A low and gentle voice rang out from the room. It was clear even through the extremely soundproof room. The black-robed man pushed the door open and entered. Behind the door was a large room of nearly 150 square meters. A crimson carpet covered every corner of the room, and the ceiling was painted with gold as decoration, spreading wantonly and carelessly over the entire ceiling. The 4 walls were all made of glass, and a huge red sandalwood bookcase took up almost all the space on one wall. The bookcase that exuded the fragrance of sandalwood was filled with books and all kinds of antiques. 2 leather sofas were placed randomly in front of the window on the other side, and in the middle was a chessboard. The room was completely dark. The floor-to-ceiling window had excellent lighting, but it was now tightly blocked by the curtains. Visibility in the entire room was extremely low. The black-robed man followed the weak light to the sofa and sat down. He continued to remain silent. The mission failed? In the darkness, the gentle and deep voice continued to ring out. In the extremely poor light, his voice seemed to come from all directions, and it was impossible to determine his exact location. "Yes." The black-robed man finally spoke, and his voice was dry. "I'm sorry, second master." "Don't blame yourself. I've been mentally prepared." The second master seemed to smile, and his deep voice echoed in the room, light as a feather. Wang Yuetong's identity is extraordinary. It would be best if we could kill her, but it's not surprising that we failed. What happened to the assassination team? All of them were wiped out. The black-robed man's facial muscles visibly twitched, and his voice was hoarse. In an environment where the black-robed man could not see, the second master muttered to himself. After a long while, he said slowly, "That's good. Then there won't be any clues left." He was silent again for a while, and suddenly asked, "Who was the bodyguard of Wang Yuetong?" "It was the enchantress." The black-robed man's voice was cold and gloomy. But the enchantress did not show up. The one who resisted the assassination for Wang Yuetong this time was a young man who was with her. The second master did not speak, and just quietly waited for the black-robed man to continue. 3 swords. The black-robed man's voice suddenly became agitated. His voice trembled slightly, with indescribable hatred. The opponent forcibly raised his realm from the chi-controlling realm to the fire-flaming realm. With only 3 swords, the assassination team was wiped out. The chi-controlling realm. The second master's voice finally carried a hint of surprise and doubt. Listening to the black-robed man's unusual tone, the second master, who knew his old subordinate well, took a deep breath and calmly said, "Do you know those 3 swords?" "I recognize 1 sword." The black-robed man's voice became hoarser. In the darkness, his body trembled slightly, with a kind of heartfelt palpitations and resentment. He reached out his hand through the black robe and touched the hideous scar on his face. He laughed miserably. "The 9th blade of Eventide. I'll never forget that sword for the rest of my life. Seeing it again today, it's like a dream." The room suddenly fell silent. The second master was silent for a long time. The black-robed man sat quietly on the sofa, in a trance like a soulless puppet. The 9th blade of Eventide. To others, this sword might only represent a unique skill of some once invincible realm legacy, but to him, it was a nightmare that he never wanted to mention again. 20 years ago, the black-robed man was the most powerful genius in the organization. Even the leaders of the organization thought that he had the potential to be invincible. At the age of 33, he entered the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. How high-spirited was he back then? Even the organization had trained him as a candidate for the position of a new leader. At that time, the black-robed man wholeheartedly wanted to rush into the invincible realm that all martial artists dreamed of and become one of the strongest people in the dark world. That was when he was at his craziest. He was so crazy that he took the initiative to carry out the top-secret mission within the organization, to go to the border of Xianxia State and besiege a young heavenly son of Xianxia State who had already entered the invincible realm. 3 invincible realm experts from various forces led the team, and more than 10 experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm assisted them. They even deployed a murderous weapon. That was the most tragic and soul-stirring battle in the black-robed man's memory. The blood of a large number of elites spilled on the battlefield, the experts lay dead, the sword light soared into the sky, and the murderous weapon roared. The black-robed man was a direct participant in that siege. Although he was at the periphery, he also had the most direct experience of the invincible realm expert's demeanor, and also the sword that changed the weather. The black-robed man laughed and cried, looking crazy. He still remembered that he was still dozens of meters away from the center of the battlefield, but the 36-year-old invincible realm expert directly swung his sword at a group of thunder-shocking realm experts while being besieged. The 9th blade of Eventide. The invincible sword intent surged. The several thunder-shocking realm experts standing at the forefront did not even move from a distance of dozens of meters. They were directly torn to pieces by the huge sword energy. The black-robed man himself could not have been spared, but when he was about to despair, a woman who had been by his side since his debut took the sword for him. After she was smashed to pieces, the aftermath of the sword energy did not dissipate. After rushing through, it destroyed half of his face. From then on, he became the black-robed man. The woman he once treasured the most was dead, and the one he saved was equivalent to a useless person. For many years, under the shadow of that sword, not only did he not break through to the invincible realm, but his realm did not even advance. Now, there was still a small distance between the true peak of the thunder-shocking realm. The black-robed man gritted his teeth and suddenly said, "Second Master, I want to kill him." "Speak clearly." The second master's voice was still gentle in the darkness, but with a hint of irresistible majesty. The black-robed man seemed to realize that he was speaking incoherently. He took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He said, "Wang Yuetong and that guy were very clever. As soon as they realized that something was wrong, they wanted to run. I stopped their car, but I was targeted. It was the military counselor." "Which military counselor?" The second master's voice sounded a little helpless. It seemed that the ninth blade of Eventide had not only stopped them from assassinating Wang Yuetong, but also made the black-robed man a little too excited. Up until now, the appearance of the enchantress made more sense. The ninth blade of Eventide and this so-called military counselor were completely inexplicable. The military counselor of Samsara. The black-robed man paused, then continued, "The one with the military counselor should be Horsewoman. I didn't dare to get too close, so I can't be sure." The second master did not speak for a long time. In the dark world today, the experts of the invincible realm were naturally unparalleled, but some special experts of the thunder-shocking realm were also shining brightly. The 12 super masters of Samsara were like that. The enchantress of the Wang family of Beihai was like that. Now, suddenly hearing that the military counselor and horsewoman of Samsara were also at the scene of the assassination, the second master was surprised, but more than that, he felt a headache. For a moment, he even felt that the assassination was a trap that someone had set for him. But as soon as this thought emerged, he forcibly suppressed it. "I heard that Wang Xiaoyao of the Wang family of Beihai has been pursuing Qin Weibai. Could it be that he succeeded?" The second master was silent for a while before he spoke to himself. There was something very strange hidden in his tone. "If my observation is correct, the military counselor is not protecting Wang Yuetong, but the little bastard beside her." The black-robed man gnashed his teeth and said, "After the military counselor found me, I retreated immediately and was chased by him for a day. Not long ago, he seemed to have received some order and disappeared. If not, I would still be playing hide-and-seek with him outside." "Have you fought with him?" The second master asked. "How is the military counselor's strength?" Among the 12 super masters of Samsara, Saint ranked first. His degree of mystery was comparable to that of the palace master. Immediately after Saint was the military counselor. No one had seen the military counselor in action, and they didn't even know whether he was a man or a woman. Now that the assassination had failed, it was at least a gain to see the military counselor. "Unfathomable." The black-robed man hesitated and said slowly, "It was a man. He was mysterious, and I couldn't see his face clearly. I fought with him for 2 moves and almost lost." As he said this, he was filled with indignation. If it was not because the sword attack he had personally experienced 20 years ago had shattered his martial will and caused him to be in a muddle-headed state for so many years, he would definitely not be any weaker than the military counselor. The second master grunted in the dark, deep in thought. The ninth blade of Eventide. The Samsara Palace. The Wang family of Beihai. Everything seemed to be connected. The second master didn't understand what was going on, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that he seemed to have found a more suitable entry point than Wang Yuetong. "Second master, let me kill him." The black-robed man's ferocious voice sounded again. He knew his current situation. In terms of martial arts, this was almost a standard inner demon. 20 years ago, the ninth swordsman had shattered his martial will and shattered all of his confidence. After struggling for so many years, he had finally managed to regain his footing. In the end, he saw the ninth swordsman again today. Although it was immature, it still contained boundless sword will. This sword would forever be an obstacle in his heart. Only by killing that guy would his state of mind be more peaceful, and he might even advance his martial arts. "Is it really the ninth blade?" The second master suddenly asked. "If it's really the ninth blade, it means that the young man is the current inheritor of Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun. That's strange. I heard that Li Honghe had a granddaughter, but she was killed not long after she was born." He should have no descendants. What's wrong with this young man? Is he an outsider? Is Li Honghe really willing to teach such an important unique technique to an outsider? If the Li family really has an inheritor, then how did the Li family get involved with the Samsara Palace? The two super masters are secretly protecting him. It seems that this young man is also very important to the Samsara Palace. Second Master. The black-robed man interrupted the second master's monologue and said anxiously, "I'll do it cleanly. I won't do it unless I'm absolutely sure. Let me kill him." Kill him? The second master asked in reply and said softly, "It shouldn't be difficult for you to kill a young man, but how are you going to deal with the super master of Samsara beside him? You seem to be no match for him, be it military counselor or horsewoman. You can't let me do it myself, can you? Since he can be with Wang Yuetong, he must be a freshman of the Sky Academy. Are you going to sneak into the Sky Academy? How long can you hold on under Zhuang Huayang's attack? Oh, I forgot that there is Yu Donglai in Huading. He is also an old subordinate of Li Honghe. It seems that it doesn't take much effort for Yu Donglai to kill you. Kill him? How are you going to kill him? Please help me, second master." The black-robed man suddenly got up and knelt heavily on the ground. In the darkness, his body trembled violently. His forehead touched the carpet hard and he said again, "Please help me, second master." "When will Gu Qianxuan come to Huading?" The second master asked casually, not knowing if he had seen the black-robed man kneeling on the ground. Gu Qianxuan, the first elder of Kunlun City and the second invincible realm expert of Kunlun City. Gu Xingyun, the governor of Kunlun City and known as the god of war of Zhongzhou State, had spent most of his time in the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State in recent years. The affairs in Kunlun City were basically handled by Gu Qianxuan. The black-robed man stopped kowtowing and said softly, "In about 3 or 4 days, no more than 5 days, he will come to meet you." 3 or 5 days? Very good. I received a secret report that Wang Xingxiao, the heir of the Wang family of Beihai, is about to break through the fire-flaming realm and enter the thunder-shocking realm. Wang Tianzong is ready to take him to the desert. Now that Wang Yuetong is attacked, it is estimated that Wang Tianzong will also come to Huading in 3 or 5 days. I am afraid that it will be very lively then. The second master chuckled softly, his tone low and cold. The black-robed man hesitated and said tentatively, "Second master, do you want to expose the boy's identity and origin?" "Idiot." The second master snorted. "If we expose his origin, it is basically tantamount to admitting that we attacked Wang Yuetong. What are you thinking about? Moreover, Wang Tianzong handles everything flawlessly. If we expose the other party's identity, even if it is just for show, Wang Tianzong will temporarily protect him. At that time, it will be more inconvenient for us to take action." The black-robed man lowered his head slightly and said nothing. "There is still enough time. You and Rose leave Hanyu Palace now. I will transfer Moonlight here. Rose and Moonlight will entangle military counselor and horsewoman. You know what to do, don't you?" The second master took a deep breath and asked softly. "Understood." The black-robed man trembled and kowtowed heavily. "Thank you, second master, for your help." The second master, whose body was always hidden in the darkness, said flatly, "Go ahead." The black-robed man stood up and cautiously left the dark study. In the dark study, the second master sat in his seat and thought silently. Gu Qianxuan, Wang Tianzong, and a descendant of the Li family who was highly valued by the Samsara Palace. The Li family, Kunlun City, and the Wang family had complicated grievances. If this key figure was killed, what should the 4 or even more forces do? The second master chuckled, lit a cigarette, and said softly, "The more chaotic, the better." The cigarette butt flickered. In the faint light, there was an elegant and cold middle-aged face. He leaned against the leather sofa behind him and muttered to himself, "The dark world without the Li family is really lonely." You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.